Luis, you look professional. Is there a purpose?
You're muted. Please.
Yeah, that'll do it. Yeah, no, I like just dressing up sometimes. So I figured that this was a good enough occasion for that. Uh, look good, act confidently, that kind of thing, you know. Um,
I love it.
it's by no means a dress code, but I figured tonight's a stressful night. We might as well feel comfortable in our own skin, you know what I mean? So I figured I'd dress up a little bit for this one.
I should have put on my suit too.
Luis, I think you and I had the same idea.
Yeah, it looks like it, Ben.
Wow,
Oh,
if two people were to wear a suit, I wouldn't have guessed you guys.
Really?
uh,
Neha, have we met?
Good to see you
so
guys here.
logistically, we're going to wait 5 minutes just to give everyone a chance to get on before we get started. We'll be starting at 6:05 and 6:35. And after we start, I'm going to explain the procedure because tonight is a very stressful night, and I'm sure we all have strong feelings about what's going on. So I'd like to keep some semblance of order through all of this. So I'll be going over all shortly. Some of you have seen the voting speakers list. It's linked on the voting items. Let me actually make that available, and I will. No, I'll make it available after I explain it. So be aware. We're just going to take 3 minutes. Feel free to chat, say hello to everyone, and have a nice time. So we'll get started soon.
Nidhi, your
Uh,
hair looks so beautiful.
Thank you, Neha.
I don't know if anyone else is just staring at her hair.
I
I
honestly
guess.
have been impressed with Nitty's hair for like a year now. I'm like absolutely in awe because my mom has curly hair too, and my hair will never do that.
I spent so much time on it. It's so embarrassing. Like at least a day, it's not worth it.
Hi, Jess. Lovely to see you. On the flip side, because
Excuse my enthusiastic waving.
Hi everyone. It's been a while. Greetings, greetings.
Welcome back.
It's been a hot minute.
we missed you on behalf of everyone here and not here.
I miss you too. I miss you all too.
Jess, it's so good to see you.
Oh my gosh, who said that? Wait, I didn't see it.
All right,
Was it?
Gilmar.
over
It
here.
was. Oh my God, look at your hair. You look so good.
I really appreciate that.
He's so
I like
thank
it.
you. I really appreciate that.
Your hair always looks banging, so like no need to remind me.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel I need to wash it.
yeah, no, we're really glad to see you back in here, Jess.
Oh, look at Louise. Hi. Oh, I'm so happy to be back. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Look at Luis in his suit. I should have wore a blue tie. We should have we should have represented both sides. No, I'm kidding. I wish I wore a suit, but I'm wearing pajamas.
Wait, Neha, do you own suits?
Yeah, I don't wear dresses. I mean, yeah,
Gotcha.
no, I don't. I don't shave, but I wear pantsuits. So I prefer that.
Okay, cool. I could see that.
So like I
I
do have
own
like
suits.
button downs, like a blazer. You've seen me in it before, but you
Have
probably
I?
don't remember.
I
The
don't
first time we
remember.
met.
Oh yeah, actually, it was like a black suit, like top and bottom. Sorry, when
Mm-hmm.
we're like discussing suits.
All
Yeah.
right, everyone. We're going to get started here. Before we call to open, I have a few things that I want to quickly go over. It's no secret that tonight is a night where emotions are going to run high. And I feel for all of you. I understand that this is an issue that deserves the attention of the student body. And I want to just quickly say that while we're here, we have a few rules, and that is basically to be respectful of each other. I hope for no personal attacks on behalf of anyone, because if that is your intent, then your speech will be limited. We're here to discuss the issues, and we're here to discuss the student body. So please be respectful of each other, be respectful of yourselves, and be respectful of our time, because we need to make sure that that we're all here to benefit the students. We have a difference of opinion here, and it's one that is a very serious difference of opinion. And we're following the constitutional mandate of the Senate to attempt to override this veto as outlined in our Constitution. So with that, I hope that we all walk away from this remembering that we're all students here, and that at the end of the day that we are in the student government, and we all believe that there are issues in this world that need to be addressed. We may disagree on how to address them or which issues those are, but we all have to respect the fact that we are all here to benefit the student body at the end of the day. And if we're not, we shouldn't be having this discussion. So with that said, I'm going to call debate to an open at 6:37 p.m. We will have attendance will be taken based on the final vote. That final vote will have 4 options. The first is in favor of overriding the president's veto. The second is against overriding the president's veto. The third is abstaining in the vote to override the president's veto. And the fourth is that you are not currently an elected senator and you don't have a vote. I will be reviewing the results, likely with the Chief Justice following the vote in order to ensure that everyone voted accordingly and the tallies are correct. When we say that there is a 2/3 majority to override, that means 2/3 of yes and no votes. Abstentions do not count towards that 2/3 majority. And I would like to make that clear now before we get any further in the meeting. This is a decision that I did not come to on my own. This is a decision that I made in collaboration with Caleb. He was very helpful in helping me sort out a lot of this procedure that we're going to be going through tonight. Before I open into public comment, we are going to where I'm going to discuss what the actual debate will look like once we get to voting items. So public comment will be anyone who is not a member of USG may come forward, raise their hand, and they will be allotted an opportunity to speak. Their speech may be no more than 5 minutes, and we will go through at that point. We are going to we're going to go into that immediately after we hear from Irene here. But before we do that, I'd like to just go on and explain how the voting items will work and field any questions that anyone may have before going forward. I want us all to be on the same page about procedure now rather than while it's happening. So there will be a speakers list that is linked right here in the agenda. This is for members of USG who are going to speak during discussion. What it requires is that you signify your name, your position, and whether you are speaking in favor of overriding the president's veto or opposing the override of the president's veto. We will be alternating between speakers of each position, starting with a statement from the president and then a statement from the author. We will then conclude we will go until there are no longer speakers on one side of the issue. And then I will announce how many speakers are remaining, and we will take 2 or 3 more of those, and then we will move to closing statements, one from the president, one from an author, and then we will move into a vote. All this being said, I'm going to now open the field for any questions on the procedure alone. If there's a question on the procedure of how tonight will function, please raise your hand now and ask. Chris.
So are we able to request to speak as the meeting's going, or do we have to put it in beforehand on the Google form?
You have to put it in the Google form now. I have opened the Google form now to accept results. So if you would like to speak, please fill it out. I will only be going by that once we get into discussion on item 5. No, not item 5, on number 5 of the agenda, but I misspoke, my bad. Any further questions? Mitch.
Yeah, just because I'm looking at the speakers list right now, and I feel like somebody else probably has this question either way. There is the option for I have not made up my mind, but I wish to speak anyway. How's that going to work? And also, yeah, what if somebody makes up their mind during these discussions and then speaks anyway? Is that okay, or how's this work?
So I encourage you to only do that if you do not think that you will make up your mind. We will be going to those third. So we will do a speech in favor of overriding, a speech against overriding, and then we will do the I have not made up my mind. And that third option, if you use it for anything but not having made up your mind, you will not be recognized to speak. I'm not entirely sure why one would speak if they have not made up their mind. I would imagine they'd more be fielding questions, but I wanted to provide that opportunity. I encourage you all to choose the first or the second option, but the third can be used if necessary. All right. Any further questions on procedure before we advance? I'd like to get all of these out of the way first, if possible.
Are we able to rebut what someone says?
No, there will be, well, unless there's a personal attack, there will be no right of reply. There will be no response. There will be no back and forth. We're simply making statements about how we believe this will benefit or harm the student body.
Thank you.
Connor.
You had said that the speakers list, you want that in now, but in making people have to make that choice now, that might put some undue pressure on them. So is it possible for this form to be available throughout the night as people come to a decision?
It is. Oh, perhaps that was unclear. This will be available throughout the whole night. When there are no longer speakers for one side or the other, I will announce that and give a brief moment for people to fill it out. But I will only be taking speeches from here, if this makes sense. So it will be open for the whole night until the meeting is concluded. But I'm only accepting speakers from there for the voting items section.
Wait, Luis, could you explain that one more time?
Okay.
What do you mean? You mean that? Never mind. Go ahead.
So public comment will be done via raising hands as we normally do. Discussion on the vote will be done through this form. And this form is just there for the sake of fairness in alternating between speakers of different beliefs.
But 5 minutes from now, I can still click an option.
Yes.
And then
This form will be open throughout all of discussion. Lakita.
Hi, so will the speakers list be showing like on the screen so that people know when they're going?
No. I can change that perhaps, but I'd have to figure out the technology. I will announce before the next speech who's speaking next, if that makes sense. So say Mitch was getting up to give a speech, I'd say, okay, after Mitch, Ben will be going. So I will be announcing that throughout the night, so you have a bit of warning.
Sounds good.
Any further questions? I saw another hand, but I didn't catch the name before it went back down.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to ask when public comment was again.
Public comment will be immediately after a comment from the deputy speaker. She will have the first public comment. It's after the conclusion of these questions.
All right, thank you.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, I'm going to yield to the first public comment from Irene.
Thank you, Luis. Welcome, everyone. For those of you who are not part of USG, thank you for being here on a Wednesday night. And I'm very excited to get this over with, as I think we all are. But I just like to leave us with two things in mind moving forward before we get started on a very long night. The first is that Senate leadership has decided that we will not be making speeches in terms of our opinions during this process, just to make it a little bit smoother and just in terms of what our roles are. But of course, we will be voting based off of where we stand at the end of the day. We would just like to be impartial during this moderation process. And the second thing that I'd like to say is that please be kind tonight. I know that, we have a lot of emotions about this topic, but we've never gotten anywhere, in hate. So please be kind. Please remember we're all going to be seeing each other the next day. And with that, I leave you to share your opinions and good luck.
Can I say one thing, Luis? Okay. Me and Irene will be staying on after this call, and our phones will be on pretty much the whole night if there are any emotions after this. I don't want this to be the only place that you can feel. You can feel after it. I can email out my number if anyone needs it. I'm open to call and text throughout and after, and I know Irene is too. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Wonderful. Thank you for both of your statements. We're gonna start off public comment with a comment from please correct me with your name, Isidore. Please
You got
correct me. Okay, perfect.
Cool. Can I start?
Yes, you have 5 minutes. Please keep it within that time.
Sure. I am Isidore Johnson, a student who cares very much about not overturning the president's veto. I represent students with diverse beliefs. Because USG reaffirms its commitment to upholding our country's democracy and constitution, the undergraduate student government should not issue a statement denouncing the Capitol riots and white supremacy with the inclusion of information like, whereas part of the undergraduate student government at STOR's mission is to foster an inclusive and collaborative community that works together effectively, which cannot be done without students feeling safe, which was not the effect of these riots. Therefore, be it further resolved that USG condemns UConn for issuing only an email response to the Capitol riots and calls on them to take definitive actions to show their support for all students of color through actions such as defunding UCPD and reinstating and refunding the CT commitment. Therefore, be it further resolved that USG calls upon the administration to evaluate whether and how it is an accomplice or an active combatant of the white supremacist conditions in which it existed. And therefore,
I'm sorry, sir, but we've all seen the legislation. Please don't just read it out and get to your statement.
I was just talking about the ones that I thought were problematic, because all of these presuppose this idea that you are either for white supremacy and against it, when you can just not be focused on that with every single thing. Instead, the undergraduate student government should seriously evaluate whether they are partisan or inclusive themselves, especially considering multiple accusations of retribution that have been made mocking students for not having a strong stance on issues they don't agree with. The USG members who want to stifle debate about controversial issues like police funding through bias reports should leave the organization because of their chilling effect on constitutional speech. Following through this resolution with the included commitments would leave USG to look needlessly partisan and would lose legitimacy in the eyes of the rest of the student body. Let's not do that. Michael is right.
Thank you very much for your statement. Grace.
Hello, everyone. My name is Grace Bringman. I am the Operations and Risk Manager Emeritus under the Thacker organization. All right. When I joined USG in 2019, I was thrilled to be part of a diverse, inclusive organization, one that celebrated the differences between our members just as it celebrates our shared common goal, to represent the student body. During my time serving as the Operations and Risk Manager under the Thacker administration, I was moved by USG's efforts to combat racism on campus, especially in response to the Charter Oak incident. We mobilized swiftly to ensure that students of color, especially Black students, had a platform to voice their concerns to the university administration. I watched as my student body president spoke at the March Against Racism rally in the fall of 2019, reaffirming this organization's commitment to racial equity. I attended meetings for an anti-racism task force created by a fellow governing board member, and I could not help but remember how impactful they were because students could finally voice their experiences with oppression directly to university leaders. At that point, USG was a unified force against marginalization. Clearly, things have changed. Upon hearing news of the veto, I felt like the progress and strides against racism this organization accomplished have been rolled back. Condemning white supremacy has never been a partisan issue. It is a human issue. Previously, this organization has always asked for accountability in the name of social justice, regardless of partisan ties. A key pillar of USG is calling upon others to ask for change. I've witnessed this firsthand through the statements we've released, the stances we've taken, and the meetings we hold with higher administration in which members of our organization emphasize that the status quo isn't enough. But now we come to a time where USG is fragmented, even within our own ranks. As the elected student government, we need to be consistent with our battle against marginalization and white supremacy, so I strongly urge an override to the presidential veto. It is in the best interest of this organization, the student body as a whole, and to build upon past administration's advancements in racial equality. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. We will now move to John Powell.
Hello, my name is John Powell. I don't have all that many titles. I'm not really in any positions of leadership, but I am very frustrated at this veto. To the president, we talked earlier about harm. 5 people are dead after this basically event of domestic terrorism. You talk about partisanship and wanting to be non-partisan, yet by not speaking up, aren't you basically enabling more events like this to happen? By saying that you're not going to say anything, aren't you basically enabling people by showing that they will not have to suffer consequences? Don't you realize that your silence is only letting these people go? My roommate was there. He stormed the Capitol. And no doubt there are more people like that who were from Yukon that were there. To the Senate, please, I implore you, you are leaders. Be the leaders of this student body. Show that you do not have to bend to the will of someone that clearly does not understand this issue. The people voted you in, and the people want this to be done. Now, please, be the leaders that we know you can be, and lead us into a better future. Not just for the people that we are, not just for the students now, but 10 years from now, 5 years from now. What you do here will pave the way for countless generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. We will now go to Caitlin.
Hi, everyone. I don't have a very amazing prepared statement, so I apologize for that. I'm a history major, and when I saw what happened on January 6th, I recoiled inside of myself and I cried. We knew it was going to happen. We knew something would happen, but watching it live made me feel so disgusting and so horrible. I don't think I have ever felt that way in my life. And to know that there are members of my Yukon community who saw what happened on January 6th and feel it's all right, we don't need to say anything about it, further makes me feel disgusted and further makes me want to recoil into my skin. There is nothing partisan about condemning white supremacy. If that is a partisan statement, that is a problem. If white supremacy being bad is a partisan thing, you need to look introspectively. That is not partisan. Condemning the Nazi flag and condemning the Confederate flag flying in our capital for the first time, that should not be a political thing. Anybody should be able to condemn that. That is not okay. That is a stance I think anybody could get behind. The displays of violence that we saw impact everyone, but especially impact students who are Jewish, who are Muslim, who are Black, who are a minority in any way, shape, or form. USG cannot play the "we are woke" card and play "we understand you" card and then not condemn the very acts of violence that put some of our students in danger and make them feel afraid to go outside. I had friends who did not leave their homes for weeks because they were afraid of getting shot. That is not a partisan thing. There is nothing partisan about this, nor is there anything partisan about forcing Donald Trump or anybody else accountable. Accountability is not partisan. When you go to our Capitol and you kill a cop, when you go to our Capitol and people die, people get shot, and you deface our democracy, you need to be held accountable for that. That is USG's job, is to hold accountable anybody, UConn student or not, for the things that they might have done and the things that they might have supported. Accountability is not partisan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try to cut everyone off at about 5 minutes in the interest of everyone's time. Hannah. Hannah, are you there? We can't hear you if you are. While Hannah is sorting out technical issues, we'll move to Reese.
Hi.
Oh,
My
hi,
name is
Hannah. Is
Reese.
that you? Oh, no, you're Reese. I apologize. I
Yes,
didn't
I'm
see the
Reese.
mute on you.
Sorry. Sorry about that. So my name is Reese Nguyen, and I'm a freshman at UConn. So I'm going to start with a bit of an anecdote, only because it leads into a point I'm going to make and really illustrates the feelings that I had on that 6th of January. So I moved to a town called Southbury, and it's in Connecticut. It's a little town, and one important thing to know about it is the majority of the population there is white. My family was the only family of color on my street, and that wasn't really an issue for the first couple of years while I lived there. Everyone was still kind and caring, and people brought brownies and they'd stop by and say hi. And while I knew I looked different, it didn't really matter. On my street, in my home, it didn't matter. But in 2018, towards the end of the summer, a family moved into the house down the street. And about a week after they moved in, they threw a party. And this was nothing unusual to me until I drove past their home, and there on the garage door was flying a Confederate flag. I remember the moment vividly because my heart stopped in that moment, and it was as though someone had pinned a target to my back. Suddenly, I was acutely aware of the yellow undertones in my skin, the language of my ancestors that fell from my lips, my hair, my almond eyes, and I felt a fear I hadn't felt in a while upon seeing that flag. For the next few years, they moved in 2018. Living, breathing, and just existing on that street felt arduous. Like I was constantly being watched. I had to be careful with each and every action I took. And every time I drove past their house and saw that flag, the butterflies in my stomach would tremble. Now, on the 6th of January, my brother and I were home alone. In the afternoon, my brother pressed his phone into my hand and said, "Hey sis, take a look at this." And I scrolled in horror through photo after photo of people waving Confederate flags, Trump flags, scaling walls, breaching and being let through lines of police, setting up gallows. And then I thought back on the people who lived down my road, who time and time again waved that flag, the flag that represents oppression, segregation, and bloodshed, and I was afraid. I was scared. I told my brother to draw the curtains. We didn't turn on the lights that evening, and we didn't leave the house. And I tell you this story because the Confederate flag is not a piece of heritage. It is a symbol of white supremacy, of a time when the nation was divided, when the color of someone's skin determined whether or not they were a person. The flag represents intolerance. It represents hostility. It represents strife. On the day of the Capitol riots, I was terrified. I was scared for myself and my brother because if the people who stood under that same flag stormed the Capitol, what would and could the people who lived just down my road do? I was afraid because I watched one of the symbols of our democracy be raided by people who believe that people like me don't deserve rights. I am privileged. I know this. I'm a person of color, and while I face discrimination in my life, I will never know the fear of having my life taken from me while I go for a jog, sleeping in my own bed, or bundling up in the cold. People don't look at me and inherently profile me as a criminal and a cheater, but on that day, I was afraid. I felt fear, terror run through my veins, and if that's what I felt, then how do the Black people in this country feel, on our campus feel? USG, in your constitution, you state that one of the hallmarks of a complete educational experience is a safe and inclusive and welcoming environment that condemns all bias, hatred, and violence, that is accessible to people of all races, ethnicities, and all other identities. How can I feel safe, and how can my peers of color feel safe, included, and welcome when you cannot pass legislation that condemns an event that rattled the very core of our democracy, at which people waved the flag of intolerance and discrimination? How can I know that the undergraduate student government truly has my best interests in mind and will protect me and my peers if you cannot officially condemn white supremacy? I'm immensely and unspeakably disappointed in USG. In the veto of the statement denouncing the Capitol rights and white supremacy, you have failed your responsibility to the undergraduate student body to represent us, to be our voice, and to condemn all bias, hatred, and violence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now return to Hannah. Hopefully her technical issues have sorted
I'm so
themselves
sorry
out.
about that. But
No
yes, I
worries,
got it
no
worked out.
worries. Go right ahead.
So like Reese, I'm also a freshman here at UConn, and I just wanted to address the president's reasoning for vetoing the legislation. His final appointment in his statement said that he finds fault with the statement that USG should condemn the abject failure and derelict duty of the U.S. Capitol Police. He brings in the death of Capitol Police officers that occurred during and following the riots. He and many others may feel that this is an insult to their bravery and sacrifice. However, I disagree, and I think that it isn't an insult to the bravery and sacrifice, as they themselves don't represent the entire Capitol Police. It would be a disservice to justice to use their deaths as a reason to not criticize. It is an insult to their families and themselves, as if we don't use it as if we use it as an excuse to not hold the police up to the standard. It is a tragedy that we lost lives, but we cannot ignore the tragedies that have also occurred due to inadequate police training and the sheer number of tasks police officers must do. While defunding the police is important, even more important is recognizing the Capitol riots and denouncing white supremacy through actual legislation. The president's veto, however, prevented this from happening. The choice to not speak against white supremacy is a quiet voice for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Ananya, is that correct?
Hello?
Ananya, you're recognized.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you. Hello, USG Senators. Today, I would like to address the issue of vetoing the statement denouncing the Capitol riots and white supremacy to help the USG remain nonpartisan, as I personally do not believe that condemning the riots at the Capitol can be simplified into a partisan issue. On January 6th, rioters used flags, boards, and other objects to symbolize a hatred towards many minority groups present at UConn. Combined with the violence used to storm the Capitol, the event in general makes many people, including many UConn students and myself, uneasy and unsafe. By directly showing hatred towards numerous minority groups, the riot moves beyond a group of people respectfully conveying their opinions into a dangerous group that threatens the basic human rights of many minority groups. Human rights should not be and are not a partisan issue, and the undergraduate student government has a responsibility to us, the students, to show us that our human rights are not a partisan issue. Moreover, this isn't a direct partisan issue politically either. Numerous Republicans and Democrats have denounced what occurred at the Capitol. So while the USG released a statement on Instagram condemning the riots and what it stands for, by not signing this legislation, they demonstrate that they're not ready to take responsibility for their words. I urge the USG to reinforce the 17-13 majority vote and approve this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ananya. We'll go now to Sam. Sam, are you with us? While Sam sorts out his technical, is that you?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
So I'm Sam Zell. I was a senator until last November when I resigned, and I think that's kind of where I'm going to start. I resigned specifically because I didn't really feel comfortable with the Senate climate, and I didn't feel comfortable personally being here because of events that happened last semester. And my biggest problem was that the Senate would, see an issue that really affected the people, and then due to, small little pieces in the legislation that they would find, not, I guess, not perfect, however, they wanted it to be. We would have these huge, sorry, there's a vacuum in the back. Can everyone still hear me? We would have these huge debates over little tiny things. And when I saw this vetoing, and I honestly, didn't think I'd be back in a Senate meeting this early. When I saw the veto, I was reminded of a lot of those events that made me kind of not want to be around Senate, because what you vetoed, when you veto this bill, you're vetoing a call against white supremacy. And I know that I really would hope that there isn't a single person in this call that would think white supremacy is a good thing or that it doesn't deserve to be condemned. But when you veto something simply based on the fact that you don't like that it mentions defund the police, or that or you don't like that it mentions, student movements, uh, you're not vetoing those student movements. You're vetoing the USG's chance to have any kind of legislation condemning one of the worst days in American history. I'm a history major, and I know that's a heavy thing to say, but the War of 1812 was the last time the Capitol building was breached, and that's a big deal. It's been 200 years, but yeah, when you veto this, and let me make it clear, and I'm sure it will be made clear later. This is something, and anybody that's been in Senate before knows that these bills don't just go to the president's desk. This is something that I wasn't here personally, but I'm sure this was something that was discussed, and I'm sure this was something that was talked about with everyone, and then voted on and actually passed, and then without conversing with the authors, or without trying to figure out a way to make a successful condemnation of the veto. It was vetoed. Condemnation of the Capitol. Sorry, it was vetoed, and all that tells me is that you don't really have a problem with the little things, and it makes me wonder if you actually have a problem with the entirety of it, and that's really worrying. And that's, again, part of the reason why I quit in the first place. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you. Oh,
Thank you
I
very
guess
much.
yeah, I support overturning the veto. I guess if I didn't make that obvious. But
Thank you for clarifying. Damon, you're now recognized.
Awesome. Thank you, Luis. Good evening, everyone. I'm Damon Reynolds. I served 3 terms as a senator here and am the former External Affairs Chair in the Ucpd administration. I come back tonight, first of all, to remind everyone that I've been following this closely, and looking back on my time in USG, there have been a lot of contentious debates and issues that have come up in our time, whether it's an executive impeachment where I was in a war room with some of you for over 5 hours, as well as various debates on issues like these, where federal issues and state issues, especially with external affairs, are addressed by our organization. And I have seen this done very gracefully in the past, whether it's the issue at the Charter Oaks Apartments that happened last year, or issues going on with people trying to cut our funding at UConn. Various issues have been addressed. Communicating between executive and Senate members is very important, but not engaging in semantic politics, which I have seen for 3 years here, is very important to do, especially with an issue as striking as this. At the end of this debate, we all have to realize that we are representative of the greater UConn community, which includes a variety of disadvantaged communities who are affected deeply by this issue and this legislation. So we have to remember that we are not making a partisan stand on many of these issues, but put it in the frame of representing the broader community. To all of you who have spoken, you have spoken very strongly and very, said a lot of awesome things. I must remind you, this debate is important, but USG is not an end-all be-all. It's truly power and activism and power in people. I support this legislation. There should be no semantic politics being played in a statement denouncing white supremacy in the Capitol riots. And it's very important that we realize that this is one tool in sending a message to the greater community that we stand against this and for disadvantaged communities. But there are many other tools out there as well. I stand with you. The community stands with you with this issue. And please, for all of you who are engaging in this debate as senators, think at the end of the night, if you're proud of the arguments and the conversations you have here, and think, are you truly representing the UConn student body? Frame it in that way. That's the reason you been elected. That's the reason why we are all here. But again, please keep it respectful, and remember, we are all UConn students and all standing up for a campus of over 19,000 people. Thank you again, and have a great night, everyone.
Thank you for those sentiments, Damon. We will now move to Jazze.
Hello, my name is Jase. Just so everyone knows, I previously ran for USG president in the past, but I'm also working at the Puerto Rican Latin American Cultural Center. I'm one of the representatives for the center. But to be honest, I didn't really prepare anything. I actually just came, and honestly, Grace motivated me to speak right now just because I was watching her, and I honestly watching a lot of speakers, and it kind of empowered me. And I was just like, honestly, this is a lot, and it's not hard to take, but honestly, I'm just very disappointed for me to watch someone in my own community not denounce something that my own community faces on a daily as well. And members of the Black community face it even worse. And I think that's even the harder part is watching this happen and watching this showcase the fact that this day, if no one knows this, I'll share this now. There was a lynch in that space, and not only does that re-traumatize the Black experience on our lands, on this land that in itself is stolen from Indigenous people to begin with, but has really re-traumatized so many Black students on this campus to a fact that we has brought a tool that was used to kill Black people on their soil just because of the color of their skin. And for someone to lead our university and not denounce something of that nature, I'm sorry that does not sit right with me, and I couldn't stay quiet. But I want to keep this short and cute because y'all have a long night ahead of y'all. But I am strongly supportive of this bill, and I've read it actually, and I'm kind of really appalled on why it was actually vetoed to begin with. But I digressed, and I thank you for everyone for speaking so far.
Thank you, Jose, for those sentiments. I currently don't see any further public comment. I'm going to allow 1 moment for anyone who is in the public to raise their hand, and then I'm going to move into debate. We are going to be skipping reports tonight, given the nature of this discussion. I see no further public comment, so we will now be moving into debate. This will proceed as I announced before, beginning with a statement from the president. For the sake of fairness, I'm allowing both the authors and the president to not have a time limit on their speech. I encourage them both to keep it as brief as possible, though, in an effort to be respectful of everyone's time while addressing this very important issue. So with that, I will now yield to President Hernandez.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but Mason just texted the thing. He said that he had his hand up, but I'm not sure if he.
I didn't see that. We will move back into public comment. I apologize for that, Mason. Feel free to make your comment now before we move forward.
Don't worry about it. Thank you, Luis. So I wasn't originally going to speak today, but a senator had made a comment. I'm not sure who it was. But said that something along the lines of people shouldn't feel compelled for or against white supremacy. Just wanted to bring notice to it was incredibly disrespectful. It goes against not just, you could disagree on legislation, but to not pick a side on white supremacy or to side with white supremacy is indicative of you saying that certain people in this room do not deserve rights. Point blank, and they're part and parcel with each other. Secondly, this shouldn't be happening. This veto should not be happening. This conversation about overriding the veto shouldn't be happening. Because really all it boils down to is semantics, right? It's misunderstandings or disagreements on specific clauses. My concern is that if that was really an issue, why was that not brought up beforehand? Why was that not addressed with the authors beforehand? Why wasn't that mediated prior to the bill coming to Senate? And that's my concern. So again, I want to bring notice to anybody that feels that white supremacy should not be decided on. You insult everybody that's here tonight, regardless Black or white, male or female or other. It's insulting. And secondly, it's getting tiring to see USG continuously bogged down in semantics rather than actual legislation. And that's something that I hope changes in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. For clarity's sake, the individual who spoke was not a senator. But other than that, thank you for your comment. We will now move into discussion on the matter. So this will go, as I said before, as I was getting into. If anyone had their hand up and is from the public and would like to speak, actually unmute yourself and say so now, because it is entirely possible that there may be a technical issue that I just cannot see. So do so now, or we're just going to move into discussion. I'm going to take it as there are no further technical issues, and we are going to move into this discussion, starting with a statement from President Hernandez that will not be timed. So please keep it as brief as you can, Mike. So please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will be attentive to the time here and respectful of everyone's time tonight. Now, I address my fellow Huskies. Thank you for being here today, and thank you to the authors and all those involved in this legislation for their hard work. I would like to acknowledge that I was not the most active person in the drafting of this bill, and for that I apologize. USG is a safe space where we can learn from each other on how to communicate and commit to shared governance. That is why it is so valuable to our learning experience. Fortunately, our Chief Diversity Officer and other members of the USG community actively participated and negotiated the clauses of this bill. Today, we have yet another opportunity for an informed and healthy debate. First and foremost, I believe that we need to strongly denounce white supremacy and the Capitol riots. What happened was an assault on our democracy and our values as an intellectual community at UConn and as a country. That we cannot compromise on. We must denounce it. However, I vetoed this legislation because it also contained partisan language with comments on an ongoing impeachment trial, as well as the Defund the UConn police movement. The latter is completely unrelated to the Capitol riots. Moreover, the legislation did not acknowledge the efforts of the courageous Capitol Police who protected our Congress on that awful day of the riots. We have an opportunity to rewrite this legislation so it does not set a precedent of making politically partisan statements. The risk is too great to set this precedent for the future. We must remain nonpartisan and stay committed to being an organization that represents all students, regardless of political orientation. We are not debating whether we should condemn white supremacy or the riots. That's not what we're debating here. We are against white supremacy and the riots. I agree. Those 2 points are not partisan. And I agree that anyone who thinks they are has a problem. What we are debating here is how we can make the strongest condemnation of such evils while staying out of partisan politics. I've been a victim of these evils myself, both as a person of color and as an immigrant without legal status. I was also hurt by the actions we saw on January 6th and disappointed. How did our country get to that point? It is more important than ever for us to see each other with respect and engage in discourse. It is reasonable for us to disagree respectfully and talk about things that make us uncomfortable. That way, we don't have to resort to these extremes that unfortunately some citizens in our country have resorted to. Tonight, your vote will determine the future of how this organization engages with the outside world. If my veto stands, we will have a new opportunity to rewrite this legislation so that it is nonpartisan, inclusive, respectful of those who died defending our democracy, and no less condemning of the evils we saw that day. I will be more than happy to be part of that effort, and I kindly ask you to join me. Thank you, and I will yield back to the speaker.
Thank you very much, President Hernandez. We will now move to the first author, Sarah Hill.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you. I'm Sarah, one of the authors. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. Use them so I do not get more upset than I already am. I'm going to get right to the point because unfortunately this happened and I'm here now. So let's start with the legislation. It was first drafted before leadership came out with a statement. It was then shared with them around when they made their statement. So that includes the President and Chief Diversity Officer. I also messaged in the USG GroupMe about it numerous times and said help and comments were appreciated. There's like 15 sponsors on the legislation of people who did look at it and support it, including the vice president and 3 out of 4 advocacy directors. While the president never reached out, eventually the CDO did comment and we made compromises. The clause that we could not compromise on, that he noted as the reason for his agreement with the veto, was on our position on what UConn did in response to the Capitol riot, which was to send an email. Well, when I explained that clause in Senate, I said that we should take those moments to reflect on what more we could be doing. He did not make his stance apparent to other members of Senate to give them a chance to weigh in or an opportunity to amend and possibly remove the clause. He knew I knew his position on it, as we had discussed it prior to Senate, but I do not see how the rest of our senators could have known. Similar to how the CDO voiced no disapproval in Senate, neither did the president. He did not say anything on this legislation. He made no suggestions for amendments to be made when we were in Senate. The first point the president took issue with in his veto was on the inclusion of language supporting defund the police, which, while the president as an individual may not agree that it is a nonpartisan stance, it is a position USG as a whole has already taken, and as the CDO pointed out in Senate, will not be overturned by the removal of the language from this legislation. The second point the president took issue with was on the stance we took on the pending trial of former President Trump, which he said is closely tied to partisan politics. But I will point out it is not a partisan issue, as when someone commits a crime, there are repercussions, and we have a responsibility to speak up, as many students felt harmed by the US former president's actions and the repercussions of his words. The final clause the president took issue with was on the Capitol Police, and all I will say about that one is that that clause was written by the Chief Diversity Officer himself, and in my original language in the legislation, I only called for Capitol Police to be held accountable. There was also no effort made in Senate to address that clause at all, or any discussion of it, seemingly because no one else, besides the president, had any issue with it. In the close of the president's veto statement, the president said he is open to work with Senate to craft a new statement. But let me make this clear. The time to work with Senate to, quote, craft a statement was when it was first being drafted, before the authors spent time and effort to write it and took time out of Senate for it. We as a Senate discussed it, and while there was some disagreement, the statement passed, with 17 votes in favor and only 3 votes against. The president's veto effectively invalidates the work of the authors in putting the statement together, as well as the work of senators and all of Senate to reach an agreement. Overall, I do not see how any of the issues talked about in the legislation are not nonpartisan, as the president's veto took issue with. And really, the things the president took issue with when he issued his veto are not the same thing, rather are completely different than what the CDO took issue with when issuing his agreement with the veto. So the CDO is not agreeing with any of the reasoning for the veto, just the fact that it happened. On this piece of legislation, the Chief Diversity Officer actually would have been an author had it not been for the one clause he disagreed with. Had the CDO been an author, the president would not have vetoed it. So the fact that the CDO issued a statement agreeing with the veto, where he directly said he would have vetoed the legislation had the president not, which, let me note, he cannot do without the Diversity and Outreach Commission, whom he did not talk to at all, concerns me, along with the veto itself concerning me. We do not use positions of power to our own advantage. We do not use positions of power to assert our own personal opinion as being the one opinion that is correct. Students are elected to these positions of power by and for the students, and now these positions of power have been used to overturn the will of Senate, the will of students elected to represent the same students those in positions of power are supposed to represent. Vetoing this legislation sets a dangerous precedent and makes me as a senator wonder what I'm here for, and wonder if these students elected to positions of power are really holding power to represent the students or just to represent their own interests. It makes me not want to be here. Others feel that too. Now I want to note, I do understand my tone while presenting the legislation in Senate was short. However, that was because I cared deeply about this issue. It was also short because I was tired. I had made plans clear to some in leadership that after this legislation, I was going to do less. To our president and CDO, respectfully, you had one piece of legislation to get through before I did less. I do not look kindly on this. To the president, you have spoken out against a piece of legislation I helped author before. I understand that was when you were still getting into the role, and that experience could have influenced how you acted when this legislation was being discussed in Senate. But even with that, there is a huge difference between saying something insensitive about a piece of legislation before you know better and saying absolutely nothing about a piece of legislation you plan to veto. USG overall has so much potential to be an effective organization. I and many others have been able to work effectively as parts of USG to take strides to make real change on campus. But unfortunately, the effectiveness of USG depends a lot on those elected to positions of power to do the right thing. At the very least, communicate. That was not done here well, or really at all. For those reasons, I urge you to vote to overturn the veto. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Hill. We will now begin moving through discussion as I announced before. We will go in the order in which they were sent into me, and we will alternate between speaking points. The first speaker will be Senator Bergen.
Hi. So I wanted to start off by saying that at our last Senate meeting, I had voted to abstain from the vote on this bill. While I agreed with much of the content of this legislation and the timing that such a statement was needed, I cannot approve of this bill in its entirety for a few reasons. First and foremost, the Defund UCPD clause. Myself and other senators have made it clear that we do not support a blanket defunding of UCPD or declarations of unspecific reallocation of UCPD funds. However, this is not the issue at hand. Defund UCPD should be addressed with separate and specific legislation rather than attached to the Capitol Hill riot statement, which has absolutely nothing to do with the Yukon Police Department. I urge the two authors to amend this clause, but both refused to, and my motion to amend also failed. Another issue I had was with the impeach and convict Donald Trump clause. I do not have an issue with the substance of this clause itself, as I believe Donald Trump is responsible and should be held accountable. Rather, I have an issue with USG making this statement at this particular time. Our USG president, Michael Hernandez, is working to make this organization less partisan, as he stated in his letter. For USG to take a position on such a divisive issue will only affirm USG's public sentiment as just a groupthink organization that represents only half of the student body's opinions. This is not to say USG should take no political positions. We are well within our right to endorse or not endorse public policy after meaningful debate. However, we should stray away from making public statements that endorse the election of a candidate or conversely support the removal of a politician from office. And besides, in a nation where we promote due process, it is wrong to publicly state whether we believe the former president is guilty before he presents his defense to the United States Senate. While the authors might have appreciated if Michael expressed his concern before our last Senate meeting, his objections, along with Damani's objections, have been known for nearly a week. Yet the authors have shown no indication for compromise on these clauses. This time, I will not vote to abstain and will instead uphold President Hernandez's veto. We all want to approve a statement that condemns the Capitol Hill riot, but not a statement that is unnecessarily controversial as this one is. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bergen. Before we move on, I would like to clarify one point of note from the speech that may be misunderstood. There is no way to amend legislation at this phase in the process. It would require a whole new piece of legislation. You cannot amend legislation during a veto override, just if those were curious why there's been no compromise made to this point. That is all that I will say, because it's just purely from the logistical standpoint. We'll now move to Senator Keelty. Feel free to go ahead.
Good evening, my friends. I take no joy in the fact that we're gathered here tonight to discuss overturning the president's veto on this legislation. And I'm not happy that we had to cancel caucus tonight in order to do this, because I was looking forward to collaborating with all of you to make this organization and this university better. In that spirit of collaboration, overriding a presidential veto is never an action that we should take lightly. It signifies that this organization, which ought to be united in support of the students, is instead divided. But for that same reason of collaboration and unity, a presidential veto should also never be taken lightly. A presidential veto ought to be an action of last resort because it, too, signals that USG was unable to come to a compromise about which we've all agreed. We've spoken about the actions of January 6th, and those alone should be enough to override this veto. But let's talk instead about the process. The president was here in this meeting for the entirety of Senate last week. He is required by USG's constitution to be here so that he can collaborate with this body to come to compromises and make sure that we can take the actions that we need to take. But instead of informing us that he had serious misgivings about this legislation, he stayed silent. He may have said, he may have apologized right now that he was not as active as he should have been. But make no mistake, the president played no role in this legislation despite his multiple opportunities to do just that. Had we known about the president's feelings, it very well could have changed our actions. I know that it would have changed the way that I voted on Senator Bergen's amendment, because I firmly believe that something is better than nothing, that action is better than inaction, and that imperfect legislation is better than no legislation at all. Had the president spoken up, we could have reached a compromise, found a version that he felt he could sign, and delivered something to those students that are struggling. We've heard from them tonight. We could have built consensus. But by its very nature, the veto seeks never to build, only to destroy. We, the Senate, were blindsided by the president's decision to get rid of something he didn't like instead of to try to improve it when he had the opportunity. Senators, I know that not all of you supported this legislation. In fact, some of you offered amendments and argued against the legislation in its current form. But that's just it. You offered amendments. You publicly told the Senate what you disagreed with and why. You did this because you wanted to make the legislation better. You wanted to make it into something that you could support because you believed that the Senate should collaborate. The president had that chance too, but he did the opposite of collaboration. For that reason, his veto is an insult both to this Senate and to the spirit of bilateralism that makes it work. For this reason, I vehemently urge everyone here tonight, regardless of your support or lack thereof for this legislation, to vote to reject this unilateral, disrespectful veto in order to make it clear that this Senate demands collaboration and cooperation from the executive branch so that we can do what needs to be done. I yield the balance of my time.
Like to
Luis is having technical problems, so
my connection is in and yes, hello?
can't hear you.
Is it working?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, my connection's going in and out. I was texting Irene. If I disconnect, Irene will take over. Just as a note procedurally. So if I just stop responding after someone's speech, Irene, just go for it, just as a heads up, and I'll sort out my internet. I'll send you over the list for speakers. The next speaker on the list is Braden.
In the interest of time, and as my points have already been made, I yield back.
Thank you, Braden. I'm going to consider that a speech against, I suppose, in the effort of fairness. Thank you for yielding the time and respecting everyone's time here. We will now move to Lakita.
I'm just gonna keep it really brief because most of my points have already been made. Thank you to everyone that has spoken up for it because I am for overriding this, and I feel like you have put it into words what I have been unable to do so till now. I do want to bring up 2 points though. One is what Senator Bergen said in regards to defund the police. Just for a fact-checking purpose, we have taken a separate stance on defund the police back in the summer. While I understand that is not around the time that you were elected. After that time, after October, right, when the new election happened, there were several instances to make such changes. We've had caucuses, we've had senates. The defund the UCPD stance was already made in the Mental Care Act. And when the president did not veto that, you set the precedent that you allowed it. And so to essentially veto this specific statement of position, you're going against your own precedent of not vetoing a legislation that already has defund the UCPD stance on it. That being said, moving on to one of the statements that was mentioned in the president's veto statement officially was that they would like to work with senators. And this is where I will just go off of what Senator Keelty just mentioned, that the time to work with senators has passed. If you had any sort of disagreements and whatnot, the proper area to have that discourse was on the Senate floor. When that did not happen, that's a concern in and of itself, right? And also to add on, like, if the legislation itself was the concern, right, to make it nonpartisan, then a separate legislation at the very same time should have been introduced that was nonpartisan, but that did not happen. It still has not happened. And so when there is a lack of response from the executive branch, and when a legislation is introduced and approved by the Senate, and then there's a vetoing of it when there's no other option, it's saying that we don't have a response, but the response that we've officially approved is not good enough. Which in and of itself it's a waste of everyone's time, because we spent the time and the effort talking about it, arguing over it, and then voting on it finally, only for it to be vetoed, only for there to be no other option for students. And there are so many students on this call speaking from a place of hurt. And to everyone here, anyone who can vote, I urge you, vote to override this veto for the sole reason that we're all hurting. And while this might not be the best response in the opinions of some, it is a response, and it is a response that we need to give, and we need to give now.
Thank you very much, Lakita. We will now go on to Nidhi. Are you with us?
I received a text from Minnie that she can't right now, so.
Okay, we'll move on to another speech against. We will now move to we'll go to the Chief Diversity Officer Douglas, and then we'll go to Senator Shad. I apologize, I forgot to announce who's going next, so I'm going to be doing that moving forward. So go right ahead, Damani.
Thank you, Luis. I'm not going to take a ton of time because I actually, have already provided my thoughts in writing to everyone here. I do want to make a few notes. The first is generally in response to some of the things that I heard during public comment. That is to say, only that it is not as though USG has not made a statement on the riots. There's one up on our Instagram. It's a white text on a black field. I think it was 9 posts ago. So I would encourage folks to take a look at that and read that, and not take the legislative debate that we are having tonight as a sign that USG or any of its members have elected to stay silent on the riots. The second thing that I wanted to mention is something that Senator Hill said when they spoke a moment ago. I did work with both Senator Hill and Senator Mack on this legislation ahead of time, and I was able to, or together we were able to come to some compromises on various clauses. And it is also true that had the one clause that I objected to not been in the legislation, that I would have put my name down on the author line. I personally, in my own advocacy, I am not in favor of calling people out for organizations, institutions out for not doing more without suggesting more that they could have done. And while this legislation does include two things that the university could have done, I take objection with the idea that those two things should have been done in response to the riots at the Capitol. I think that the Connecticut commitment and I think that the Connecticut commitment should be reinstated because that's the right thing to do. And I would hold that opinion regardless of whether or not the riots occurred. I feel the same way about defund UCPD. I think that's the right thing to do, and I think that that also should be happening regardless of whether or not the riots occurred. So the clause as written, I take objection to, and that's my thinking on here on this, and that is why I encourage support for the veto. If folks feel, particularly senators, feel the opposite of that, I encourage everyone to cast votes based on the legislation. Do you agree with everything that is written on the legislation? If the answer is yes, if you do agree to that, then vote opposite my position. If you think that there is room for improvement within this legislation, then there's nothing precluding any senator from bringing forward another piece of legislation at Senate next week that is different and has room for and time for collaboration. So that's my statement. Thank you, Luis.
Thank you, Damani. The next speaker is Will. The speaker after Will be Nidhi.
All right, thank you, Luis. So there's just a few things I want to say. I want to start with saying I'm really glad with how debate's going tonight. I'm glad to see that there's very few, talking about each other and more talking about each other's ideas. I'm very proud of what everyone said. On top of that, I have a lot of respect for President Hernandez, Damani too, all of these people who've been, on the other side of this position than I am. I have a lot of respect for them, and I just want to make sure that we're all keeping this civil, and I'm very glad to see what's been said. But there are a few things that I want to add. So the first is on partisanship. There is no bylaw, constitutional amendment, or rule that says that USG has to be nonpartisan. Now, I think for the most part, we should be. For the most part, we should not be saying which political party we like better. We should not be going around endorsing candidates or doing any of that. I think that would be irresponsible. But I think there are some exceptions. When it comes to the rights of our students and protecting the rights of the students and advocating for the rights of the students that we are here to represent, I think USG is bound to take sides. Now, this does not mean, like I said, taking a side in every election. This means in very extreme circumstances, we should be able to say, this is bad and this is right. I think of the example, if somebody were running for Mansfield Town Council who had said that they were going to be openly hostile to negotiations with UConn, to UConn students, USG, I would expect them to speak against them, to release a statement saying, we do not think that UConn students should vote for this candidate because they are bad for UConn students. Similarly, when a president of the United States of America encourages people to storm the Capitol building and threaten all of our democratic rights, all of our civil rights, I would expect USG to take a similar position. Now, like I said, these are extreme circumstances, and I think it calls for extreme action. And I think USG's statement was appropriate. I think this legislation is even more appropriate, calling out exactly who is at fault and saying what we think should be done. Now, to move on a little bit, I want to talk about Defund UCPD. We've actually voted on this twice now, and we have voted to support the statement both times. I also don't think this is a political statement in nature. I think we're talking policy, not necessarily which side we like more, and I think it's appropriate for USG to take a side. At the end of the day, there were protests in UConn and Hartford over the summer of UConn students protesting to defund UCPD. So we are listening to our constituents when we take this side. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, and I'll be quick, Luis, I'm sorry, is the president's responsibility here. For those of you who don't know, I was president for a very brief time before President Hernandez, and it's the responsibility of the president, as I learned, to know what's going on in the organization. Every single bill that hit the Senate floor, I knew what was on it, and I knew who had written it, and I had talked to them. The president and President Thacker before Josh and President Crow, I guess Josh, did the same exact thing. It's the responsibility of the president to know what's going on, to talk to the authors if they have an issue, and to resolve those issues before it hits the Senate floor. There shouldn't be surprise vetoes. And for surprise vetoes to exist is, in my mind, irresponsible. To veto legislation without speaking against it, without talking to the authors, without proposing amendments, and without even knowing it existed is frankly an insult to the Senate, the authors, and to our founding documents. I encourage all of the senators here to vote to overturn this veto. I think it was irresponsible. I think we have a duty to do better, and I think right now we have a very rare opportunity to show the students what we really stand for. I encourage all of you to vote to overturn this veto, and I really hope that we're able to do something great here today. Thank you, Luis.
Thank you, Shad. Nidhi is speaking now, and then after that, we'll go to Katie.
Hi, everyone. Sorry for not speaking up earlier. I had some connectivity issues. I don't have a set speech like some of the rest of you. I just wanted to speak up from the heart. I am a member of the USG, of the undergraduate student UConn body, and I am also an immigrant and I'm an international student, and I wanted to make something very clear. White supremacy is one of the most nonpartisan issues out there, and it's very obvious that the undergraduate student body should do its part in denouncing this publicly, and as mentioned in the piece of legislation in question, making undergraduate students at UConn feel safe and feel welcome. However, I think it's also our duty as the undergraduate student government to represent our student body and to produce better legislation each time we go to Senate. And I think that this bill, it's this contentious mainly because it is not doing that. It's not upholding what should be a basic standard of producing good legislation that seeks to remain as nonpartisan as it possibly can, especially including clauses that seek to defund UCTV and clauses that seek to denounce President Trump for something that he's not yet been convicted for, and also other Republicans being lumped in that category. USG is known to have a very bad public image for being a very exclusive organization that only welcomes people of certain political ideologies. And overturning this veto is just going to exacerbate that image that USG has among other students in the student body. And this is not doing USG any favors, and it's not doing the people you represent any favors. That is why I wanted to urge all senators present here to make sure that we do not overturn this veto and that we can do our best to produce better legislation each time as senators, as members of USG, in any role that you possess. It is your duty to be as nonpartisan as you can and to be as representative of you as you can of the student body at UConn. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're now going to go to Katie, and then we are going to go to Edward Zelkman. I think that's Zelkman, yes. So Katie's up next. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to keep it short and to the point. I just want to say just a quick little statement. When we were exposed on Black at UConn in the summer, we sprung to action. We took some steps, a huge one being the creation of a CDO. Now we have become complacent because no one is watching us anymore. We can't stand in solidarity just when we're being watched. Advocacy doesn't end at an Instagram post.
Thank you, Katie. We'll now go to Edward, and then we will go to Jess.
Okay, thank you. Hello, how's my audio?
Wonderful, it's working.
Okay, good. So I was not planning on speaking today, and because of that, I don't have a speech, but I do have some thoughts that I wanted to convey to anyone who has a vote today. And as I said, I don't have a speech, so I apologize if my dialect is too conversational. But first off, I'd like to begin by stating my position, and what I believe to be is the position of anyone who's on the same side as me, including the president. So my position is not against condemning white supremacy. I think you would have a lot of trouble finding anybody who is against condemning white supremacy. And as many of the people who have spoken before me on my side have stated, they do want to condemn white supremacy. That's not what the issue is today. And after speaking to the president on the phone, I know that that's not what the issue is for him, and that's not why he vetoed the legislation. And with that, I want to get to the statement. So in concern to this statement, as much as anyone on the other side wants to deny it, it is a political statement. It is. Because saying things like calling out MAGA hats and calling for the impeachment of a president and calling for a movement that wants to defund the police completely, not reform, absolutely defund, a position that's extremely controversial in today's politics, is a political stance. Now, some of you, as one speaker before me did, may say, well, In extreme situations, we have to be political. I reject this notion completely, because who is to define what extremely means? You have no legislation or bylaws saying when the Senate is going to be political or not. The only thing that's defining extreme in this situation is your own bias. And because of that, we need to try and avoid it. We want to try and stay as apolitical as we possibly can, because that is the duty that every elected member of this student body has. When you get elected to the Senate by the people, you have one job: to represent the people and do what is best for them, not impose your political views on them, which is exactly what this statement does. And frankly enough, this statement epitomizes the body of the student government. And that's not my own opinion. I know many people who believe the same thing. The student body is extremely political. They give way too much attention to focusing on political issues rather than doing something that actually benefits the people. And, excuse me, as I was saying, they give too much attention to focusing on political issues, and anyone who doesn't agree on the government's consensus ideals is kind of shut out. This has happened to many people, and I know a lot of people are intimidated to speak as a result, and they're intimidated to disagree. We have to move away from this. And after speaking to the president, I know that that is exactly what he is hoping to achieve. So because of that, to anyone who has a vote today, if you have any sense of responsibility, any sense of duty to the people who elected you into this position, vote against this political legislation. Try and keep the student body as apolitical as possible, and so that we can move on, draft a new statement that actually represents the consensus view of the people in this body, and then we can move on to doing something that will actually help the people, that will benefit the people who elected you and who are expecting you to work for them and advocate for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. Jess, you're up to speak now, and then after you is Anissa.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Jess. We hear you.
Hi everyone. I'm Jess. I started off as a senator last year in the fall in 2019, and then I was parliamentarian, and then I was speaker, and I got to work with lovely Will Shad. I'm here to say a few things. I'll be very honest that I'm not as well spoken as everyone else. I probably won't use the same language as everyone else. Kind of a little bit conversational. I just have a few things to say. So, to President Hernandez, something you said kind of stuck with me. You said that you're against white supremacy and the riots, but you did decide to veto this entire legislation. So that's a little bit confusing within itself. I did read your entire veto and I understand why you wanted to veto it. I guess I just don't agree with it. And I just want to remind everyone here that about a year ago, year and a half, I want to say, Pri and Manny were president and vice president, and they were at the March Against Racism. And here we are, fast forwarded, the same organization, and we're here having an emergency Senate about a veto against a statement denouncing the Capitol riots and white supremacy. So I thought USG was about moving forward. I didn't really think we were going to take steps back. Pri and Manny were always against racism. And if you're against racism as an organization, I don't understand why we're sitting here talking about a veto against a statement about white supremacy and Capitol riots. I just don't, it's just not adding up to me. I haven't been a part of USG, I'll be very honest. I haven't been here in a while, but I had a lot of senators coming to me. I had a lot of different people coming to me and very concerned and very upset about this. So what I want to say to everyone is that it's really exhausting to be a part of USG. And then it becomes more exhausting when we have to go through things like this. And from what I've heard tonight, it seemingly was a surprise veto. I don't know much about what happened. I'll be very honest. I'm just here to speak on my own thoughts. But if this is all true, that it's a surprise veto, I agree with what someone said in the beginning. That's very divisive as well. Divisive meaning dividing. I don't know if I'm using the word divisive right, but it divides the organization as well. So there's a lot of things to be considered here. I am personally for, I don't know how to say this. Louise, tell me if I'm wrong. I'm for I'm for overturning the veto. Does that make sense? Okay, I said it right. Okay, good. I'm for that because I do think that working as speaker myself and then also working as parliamentarian, the president and the vice president and the CDO all had the time to go through this beforehand. There's no reason that there should be a veto when we all have conversations about it all the time. Louise and everyone knows, everyone who's part of leadership knows that we all sit and go through each of the statements that we get handed to our office. So I'm not sure why a veto was done. There could have been a conversation, there could have been a lot done before we got to this point. And that's the reason why I am going to vote against overturning the veto. But I won't take up too much of your time. Thank you for letting me speak, Louise. I know I'm not the best spoken, but tried my best.
Thank you, Jess. We will now be going to Anissa and then Christine. And then that actually concludes the alternation. We still have 2 speakers in favor of overturning the veto. This is just a heads up. If you would like to speak in this discussion, and you please submit the form now, because we will be concluding debate soon if I receive no further requests to speak. Just as a note, so everyone's aware, we will now go to Anissa. Feel free to begin speaking.
Hi, I'm Anissa. I'm glad to be here, everybody. Nice to meet you all and see you guys and hear everybody. And I'm very glad that we've congregated in this environment where discourse is encouraged. So I don't think that this institution is necessarily being fair to what the veto actually was. I read all of the statements extensively, and nowhere in President Hernandez's statement did he proclaim any support for President Trump, for what happened that day, or for any of the issues that those who are against the veto have brought up. In fact, he was very in line with what everybody's speaking about today. The issue, which was very clearly outlined, is the support of the defunding of the UCPD, not taking issue with the condemnation of white supremacy as many anti-voters have tried to make it out to be. Now, I've heard about the fact that this veto is problematic because it's a pointless semantical issue. I take issue with that. I would seriously be concerned if our government just put legislation into action with contentious clauses and then said, oh, it's just semantics. In that same way, in this day and age, semantics are important. Not to mention, the defund the UCPD has too big of an impact to be an issue that any reasonable person would just call it a semantical issue. It's too big of a piece of legislation to just tag on to the denouncement statement. I also think that it's unfair to say that the second clause involving partisan language regarding the impeachment is nonpartisan. It is, in any way you cut it, and I don't think it's reasonable to say it isn't. That doesn't change the validity of the belief in the impeachment, but it still does contain partisan language, especially considering the fact that we would be speaking on a trial that hasn't concluded, as Nithya, I believe it is, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, pointed out very eloquently. I think that the goal of keeping the USG nonpartisan, as President Hernandez has vehemently stated, is a goal that should be strived for, because we are supposed to represent the entirety of the student body, not just those who subscribe to a certain ideology. I also don't believe that defunding the UCPD, is in any way a remedy to what happened on the 6th. Now, while some people here are upset about the fact that President Hernandez wasn't as vocal as he should have been, or how he conducted himself when this legislation was coming up, that isn't a reason to pass legislation that some people obviously have issues with. Regardless, legislation shouldn't be passed to spite anyone because you have been offended by a believed procedural error, because this is what we are doing for and going to show our student body, and that line of reasoning, I believe, is very immature. For these reasons, I support President Hernandez's veto, and I urge my fellow senators to do so if you believe in creating an environment where discourse is encouraged and our duty is to the entire student body. Thank you.
Thank you for your speech, and I apologize for mispronouncing your name. We will now return to Christine. And then, seeing as there are only 3 speakers remaining, I'm capping the speakers list here. All of the remaining speakers, for transparency, are in favor of overturning the president's veto. I'm going to allow these 3, and then we are going to move into closing statements, and then we are going to move into a vote. And I will talk about the vote after we've concluded closing statements. So Christine, feel free to go ahead. After Christine will be Kavya, or yes.
It's pronounced Kavya for the next speaker, no worries. So hi everyone, I'm Christine Jorquera and I'm the Student Development advocacy director. Sorry, I always have trouble. I feel like I have a duty to speak on the situation at hand. I work directly with the cultural centers and various organizations within marginalized communities and identities on campus. I have a duty to them and myself, a first generation Latina who has had firsthand accounts of racist, sexist, and numerous other systems of oppression working against me. I say all this today because I am one of the many students who has felt hurt first by this veto. For context, I'm a human rights major alongside with psychology. So that pertains to what I'm going into. Personal ideologies aside, party lines should not decide the treatment of people. Social justice issues such as racism, discrimination, homophobia, Islamophobia, and transphobia, along with numerous other issues, are inherently human rights issues. This being said, weaponizing human rights as political walks a fine line. Historically, the same precedent is what has been used to be complicit and silent on numerous human rights violations that have occurred in our history. As students and as human beings that have come here today to speak about the numerous feelings and experiences with systems of oppression, these are not political. These are stories and experiences that we must use to push forward. If we choose to stay silent on the issues and systems of oppression that have not only influenced the events at the Capitol, but also play a day-to-day role in students' lives today, we're not standing for the students of our student body. As an undergraduate student government, these are social issues we have to talk about. The time has come where silence is not enough. As student leaders, we must set the precedent to allow students now and those that come after us to speak against social injustice. The arguments made against this legislation have already done more harm than good. This veto will set the precedent for orgs and diverse marginalized communities to not want to work with us because we are inaccessible and exclusive. We cannot parade diversity and inclusion, then not hold ourselves accountable within our own spheres of influence. And I say all that, but I lastly just want to leave with this message to everyone that has spoken before or after me. I do just want to say thank you because we all chose to speak up for what we believe in today, whether we agree or not. You should all be proud of yourselves. After tonight, no matter the outcome, take care of yourselves and take care of your human needs. Spread love, everyone, and I yield my time.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I missed how to pronounce the next speaker's name. Could you please tell me again?
Hi, no
Kavya.
worries. Kavya.
Kavya. All right, Kavya, go ahead, and then we will go to Mitch.
Hi, all. Thank you so much. Again, I don't want to take up too much time, and I also was not planning on speaking, but I can't not speak out about this anymore. Sarah and Darren have worked so hard on this legislation, and it really comes from the heart, and it's based off the facts of the events on January 6th. Now, due to medical reasons, I could not be at last Senate, but I do know from many reports and from many people that they were completely blindsided from last Senate, and that is just not okay. If something was brought up about making amendments to that from the president, then that should have been brought up at last Senate, not in this veto, which was very blindsiding to them. I also just want to talk about one point that was made in the veto. I think I can speak on behalf of many of us when I say that Donald Trump is a white supremacist. And if we can just remember what he said in his debates, I know that we're trying to be nonpartisan and our president does not want us to be partisan, but I think this goes beyond politics and goes into human rights, as many of us said. So in President Hernandez's veto, he said that he cannot support the conviction of Donald Trump, yet he says that we have to denounce white supremacy. So if Donald Trump is a white supremacist, how can we not convict him? And also, I just want to end with, I am new to USG. I'm a junior, and I've heard about it, my freshman and sophomore years, but I decided finally that I want to join in. I'm not a very big political person, but I finally decided to. And I came to USG in the hopes of ensuring that our student body cannot have acts of racism, ableism, any acts that are just any form of hate. Sorry, I'm bad at talking. Or any other form of hate. And if we cannot overturn this veto, what am I here for? What are all of us here for if we cannot do this? We are here to support our student body. We are here to show them that we want the best for them. We want their safety. So if we cannot overturn this, then I have not stuck to my promise. None of us will have stuck to our promise. So I really do encourage all of you to overturn this veto. We have a duty to support all of our students. And also, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has spoken, and thank you to the co-authors of this legislation. I yield my time. I think that's how I say it, but yes.
Thank you. No need to yield time. We got rid of that a little while ago, but thank you for doing so anyway. We will now go to Mitch, and then we'll finish the speakers list with Janana, and then we will move into closing statements, one from the president or his designee, and one from the second author, Darren Mack. So, oh, whoops, sorry. Mitch, feel free to take the floor.
Alrighty, guys. Just to start, I just want to say that I'm glad we're having this dialogue and that everyone is voicing their opinions, even folks that didn't originally think they were going to speak. It's always good to see. I know we're all emotional right now, and there's a lot running through our heads, and I think the way I think about this whole thing, and I'll get to my final decision on the way I'm voting as an original supporter of this legislation. But also thinking about this from both sides. I'm a political science major, so this is something that I think about a lot in terms of partisan politics and politics in general. And on the 6th of January, I was coming home from Hartford, where I was there with a friend, seeing what was going down at our state capitol, and I never imagined. For some reason, I never imagined what happened in DC was going to happen that afternoon. I walked in, saw my family gathered on the couch and watching the events on CNN unfold, and everything that was happening. We saw police officers under attack. We saw our Capitol invaded by folks that are not the best of the American people, or really the will of what I believe this country to be and stand for. And I was devastated. I felt like we were losing our country. I was devastated. Potentially years ago, when Trump was originally elected, just because of some of the rhetoric that he would do outside of partisan politics, and outside of ideals that the Conservative Party holds or that the Liberal Party holds. Simply some of the rhetoric that surrounds a lot of this. And I called a few people that night, and I called Mike Hernandez, and we discussed the events of the Capitol. And Mike was distraught as well with what he was seeing. And I do feel like I need to say that to fully disclose everything here. And Mike was upset. But where perhaps Mike and myself do fundamentally disagree here is on the nature of partisan politics. And this is more of a political science discussion. And I'm definitely more of an idealist than a realist or whatnot. And essentially, in our country, what I had hoped that I would see is that both parties would have condemned the actions that occurred at our state at our capital in Washington D.C. And unfortunately, we didn't really see that unfold. We saw one party easily condemn Trump and the actions that unfolded that helped to create this horrific event, while the other party, while I had hopes, would have condemned such violence, that hardly did, and that hurt as an American to see, as someone who has a lot of conservative friends, as someone who likes to try and look at both sides at every point, and fundamentally, I thought that was wrong. And so when I look at an issue such as this and legislation that we're trying to pass here, I think it's not partisan in nature, or it shouldn't be. Not in our generation, guys. We're college students. We're growing up. We have an opportunity to define a new America in which the United States is not labeled by partisan politics, but instead by the will of the people and the good of the people. And I think no matter what party, if it was Trump's party, if it was the Democrat Party, whoever it was, that the USG here would condemn the violence that occurred at the Capitol. And yes, there were some specifics about this legislation, some tweaking that I suppose could be done to help all of us come into that. And I wish we were able to do that before the legislation got to this point, but unfortunately that didn't happen. And so I'm glad that Mike did apologize for not speaking out that night, and maybe something we wouldn't be necessarily in this spot right now. But I think fundamentally, all of us collectively should be able to agree no matter what our party is, that what happened at the Capitol is wrong and that we must condemn it. We must condemn white supremacy. And I think this body, the USG, has also declared white supremacy an issue. We've declared that we do support defunding the PD, and I think it's important that maybe we have a discussion about what that really means, because there is a lot of misconstruation, whatever, on what that really means by a lot of the partisanship that we see in our news media and stuff like that. And it's really hard to separate ourselves from that. And so, someone coming from a political science lens, I can see why Mike would veto this to help protect the USG in what he believes could be used as an embroilment of partisanship. But I fundamentally disagree in that notion, because I believe something like this is something so beyond partisanship, because our capital was attacked in a terrorist attack. And I think I see where everyone's perspectives are coming from, but I do fundamentally disagree that this is partisan, or it should not be. And I think all of us as students should be able to recognize that we're smarter than that. We're not playing into any politician's handbook. We should be able to say, look, what happened was wrong. We're condemning it. And we can include maybe, and I suggest to the members tonight that wanted to keep this veto, perhaps another piece of legislation, coming out with a disclaimer or something like that, in which no matter what party this was, that we would condemn these actions and that we don't see this as a partisanship in nature. If you do want to prevent media or somebody taking this away, whatever your reasons are for vetoing, and with that, I apologize for going over my time. I did have some other things I would have said, but I suppose that was my new take, otherwise, rather than repeating other folks' things.
Thank you, Mitch. I appreciate you conserving in the effort of time. We will now move to the final speaker before closing statements, Janena.
Hi. I honestly see no problem with the legislation that was brought to Senate, and I am strongly in support of overturning the veto. We have taken a position of defunding UCPD previously, even in this academic year. I think everyone should be in agreement with denouncing the Capitol riots and white supremacy. And since President Donald Trump incited such riots, this matter should not be out of this legislation. And I'd like to yield the rest of my time to Senator Hill.
Senator, I apologize. I'm not as up to date on the yielding rules as I used to be. So I'm actually going to defer to the Chief Justice, as I didn't establish whether or not this could be done initially. So Caleb, I'll yield to you on this front.
Thank you, Speaker Toscano. It is my personal opinion that since no other speaker has spoken more than once, and the other author, Senator Mack, is going to close all debate on this for the evening, I personally would not be in favor of that yield to Senator Hill.
Thank you for your advice, Caleb. I'm sorry, Sarah, and I'm sorry to Janena, but Janena, you may take the rest of your time if you'd like it, but I'm afraid I cannot allow the yield, as I didn't establish that it could be done prior. It seems a bit unfair, given it's the final speech. I do apologize for that, but I would like to keep this fair. To a certain
I'll
extent.
yield to the chair then. I don't have anything to add.
Thank you. We will now move to the closing
I have a
statement.
question to this. What was just happening just now? So is it personal, or is it the Constitution that we're reading when we're making these statements?
So to answer your question, Jose, I have authority to set limits on debate, and a limit that I've set is that, seeing as there's currently no rule on yielding, I'm not going to recognize this yield. It's something that, as chair of the meeting, I can choose to do or not do.
Okay, thank you.
I'm glad to help. We will now move to the president, or his designee, should he have chosen one. I don't know what he's done here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will be speaking on my behalf. And thank you, everyone, for being committed to shared governance, debate, and simply learning from each other. I hope you will consider my position here today and vote so that we have another opportunity to write this legislation so that it is nonpartisan, inclusive, and respectful and sensitive to the experiences of those who died fighting for our democracy. The vote has nothing to do with me. This vote is about procedure. and our ability to use it to be conductive to healthy debate and to being inclusive of all students, regardless of political orientation. While, we also condemn the evils of the world, we can do both. We can be inclusive and assertive. Being partisan is easy. Being nonpartisan is hard. You have to commit to it. There's an intellectual and personal commitment to it. Remember, partisan politics have often been used to hurt minoritized and marginalized communities. Let's not open the door to partisan politics. Remember, your vote today will carry a legacy that will determine whether USG engages or stays away from partisan politics. We represent constituencies more diverse and larger than we could possibly imagine or even understand in our short terms as members of USG. I can assure you that I have not met all 20,000 UConn undergraduates. Also remember, it is not always easy to vote on these issues, but there is a choice. Make an informed choice today and vote based on your beliefs. Regardless of how you vote, we will condemn white supremacy and the riots. Your vote is not determining that. We are unified on those issues. Don't get confused on what we are really debating here. The debate has strayed here. And unfortunately, some people believe that we're voting on whether we condemn white supremacy or not. What your vote will determine is whether we remain nonpartisan or steer further into the territory of partisan politics. And for the first time in a long time, we've heard in this organization from people who say they didn't feel comfortable sharing their ideas. Today, we were able to have a debate. We heard voices we had never heard before. It is evident that USG can have disagreement and it can welcome people with different ideas. Let's expand that, not contract it. All UConn Huskies should feel comfortable being part of the student government, regardless of their political orientation. I applaud you all for sticking to your principles and for defending them in such an eloquent way as I have done today. Thank you, and I yield back to the chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will now yield to the author, Senator Mack, to give the final closing statement in this discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to preface my speeches. I've heard a lot today, and it's taken every ounce of my being not to, pick and choose. But I'm going to remain focused on what I have to say. But I did write out something before my actual speech. It's relatively short, but I'm going to be honest with you all. I am so sick of the white folk in this call who have the audacity to sit here and tell me, a black man, and tell these other folk, these people of color who have been through things that you couldn't possibly imagine, on what's an appropriate response to white supremacy. This isn't a healthy debate. This isn't a healthy discussion. You know, it's a healthy discussion talking about your favorite bag of chips. I'm so tired of debating the validity of my own existence with folk like y'all. This isn't a game, and I'm so tired of this whitewash technicalities on, well, we're looking at this and we're looking at that. The fact of the matter is that we are discussing a piece of legislation that condemns the Capitol riot and white supremacy that got vetoed. That's just at the end of the day. But I'm going to start off with my thing because I just had to get that off of my chest and whatnot. Greetings, Speaker Toscano, President Hernandez, and members of the Senate. I am sure that you all know me well, so I'll keep the sort of formalities brief there. There are a lot of things that I would love to say, but I'm going to take the high ground here and show you as much grace as I can muster. Don't expect a lot of it. It is unfortunate that we had to reconvene in this manner, but I would say this veto is indicative of what's wrong with this organization. For far too long, this organization has hid behind the safety shield of nonpartisanship when it is time to do something right or to simply take a stance. It is a tremendous failure in our duty to support UConn students and a waste of time to sit idly by and worry about partisanship when Black lives, when Hispanic lives, when Asian lives, and our own democracy are on the line. Again and again, I find this desperate need to remain nonpartisan and uncontroversial as not only impeding on our organization's ability to do great things, but to also do the right thing. Where our time should be devoted in service to others, I find that we often waste it playing petty politics here. There should be no dispute that in this legislative body that the former president incited his followers to violence, and they should be held accountable for it. Let me give you a civics lesson today. Impeachment is a tool in which the highest office in the land is held accountable. If you truly wanted accountability and justice to be served to the former president, you would support it wholeheartedly within this legislation, President Hernandez. It is a tool of the American government as a safeguard against tyranny, and one that has been unnecessarily politicized in the past year, holding a criminal, regardless of their political affiliation, accountable for their actions is not a partisan issue. What he did was wrong, and we as an organization have a duty to point that out. Nonetheless, I believe that ulterior motives are at play here. I'm going to repeat it again. You had plenty of opportunities to speak up, like any of my other fellow senators, to communicate your dissatisfaction with said legislation. You might have apologized, but it's too late for that. You had the opportunity to address the floor with the proposed amendment. These are all things that you could have done within your power if you felt any sort of dissatisfaction with the said legislation. However, you said nothing against the legislation, and it passed with an overwhelming majority, only for you to veto it without even a courtesy call or a heads up to me or my co-author. This is not the way that a president should work with legislation or communicate with this legislative body. It is tremendously unprofessional and unbecoming of the office of which you hold. I find it embarrassing that an emergency Senate meeting had to be called to ultimately debate your political stances than to rather do the jobs that we were elected to do, which is to serve in the interest of all UConn students. I noticed in your veto that you asked to hear productive and realistic suggestions from the Senate on how the University of Connecticut as an institution could have better responded to this incident. I find this tremendously hypocritical, as word has it that you and some members of your executive board felt that a response regarding the Capitol riots was unnecessary to begin with. It was only with the urging of certain members of Senate leadership in the advocacy chairs that a statement was even released, and it was a piss-poor statement at that. In addition to that, you yourself as president have posed no suggestions to this legislative body on how this university should respond to this tragedy. In fact, Sarah Hill and I took up charge in doing so, where you seemingly would not and could not be bothered to do so. I take offense to the vetoes, which were formed on what seems to be an attempt to impose your ideas on how you think this Senate should run, which are ultimately your own personal problems, should not be projected onto the Senate rather than legitimate grievance. Firstly, with the fact that you, President Hernandez, disagree with the defund the police stance taken within the legislation. Whether you like it or not, this Senate has spoken and taken a definitive stance on the matter, one in favor of defunding the police on numerous occasions. There isn't a thing that you can do about that. A veto of this bill on that basis puts yourself in opposition to the will of this legislative body, in opposition to the Black, Indigenous people of color on this campus, and only illuminates how out of touch you are with your colleagues and constituents. This is not a fight that you will win against Sarah and I, or against the Senate, not now or in the long run. The Senate has voted in favor of this, and it is your job to uphold and enforce our ruling, regardless of your hot political take on the matter. Though I must ask, will you veto every piece of legislation that includes calling for the defunding of the police since you disagree with the idea? I must warn you that putting yourself in opposition to the Senate and USG as a whole, especially on a piece of legislation like this, will do you no favors in this organization. It will make you no friends on the Senate floor. In all honesty, throughout this entire process, you have proven to be an obstacle to this organization as we seek to implement meaningful change on campus. This isn't the hill you want to die on, nor will I allow you to drag this organization that I love down with you in this meaningless crusade. You are fighting to veto a bill that at the end of the day, regardless of your political affiliation or obsession with nonpartisanship, that condemns the storming of the U.S. Capitol. In my opinion, your decision was one that is nothing short of ridiculous and tone deaf. And I must note the majority of USG leadership, in addition to your vice president, sponsored this bill. Did that not carry any weight with you in your poor choice that you made last Wednesday? With this veto, you have made this organization look nothing less than divided and incompetent. This is a terrible look for the undergraduate student government. And with that being said, I do not believe that the well-being or public appearance of this organization was taken into consideration when moving forward with this veto.
Senator, please maintain a degree of decorum and please do not personally attack the president.
I'm not. My apologies if that's what it seems like. It was a poorly executed decision on your part that has done nothing but hurt this organization, its reputation and morale. I keep repeating it in my mind, yet I still can't comprehend it. USG president vetoes legislation condemning the Capitol riots and white supremacy. Let that sink in. By vetoing this, you have once again contributed to the already present distrust and apathy that students feel for this organization. You have contributed to the growing discontent amongst members of this organization who are often ignored and diminished in their capacity. There seems to be an interest taken by some members of the executive board to act as if they are part of the main cast of Scandal or House of Cards than to do their job and to do them with the best of their ability. And I'm almost done. I know I keep talking, but I have a lot on my mind. Furthermore, regardless of your affection for the U.S. Capitol Police Force, the fact that they failed miserably in their duty is not up for debate. There is video evidence of U.S. Capitol Police assisting and aiding rioters in storming the building. Several officers stationed at the Capitol during last week's siege have been suspended, and more than a dozen of them are currently under investigation for actions that range from inappropriate support for the rioters to suspected involvement with the insurrection, according to multiple news sources. President Hernandez, you also make mention that these brave men and women bravely held the line. Surely you must misunderstand what holding the line means in strategic context, or perhaps you thought that that line included Speaker Pelosi's office, the Senate chambers, and the bathroom on the third floor in the Capitol. They failed in their duty that day. All in all, there was undoubtedly a permissive attitude on part of the U.S. Capitol Police Force that contributed to the success of these white rioters. So I posed the question to my fellow senators: what would have happened if those rioters were black? I can tell you that we'd be having a very different conversation today. There is no way that in America, rioters should have successfully forced their way into the Capitol building without guarantee of lethal force to meet them. Yet that consequence was not afforded to them because of the privilege possessed by their skin color. The hypocrisy and inaction of the U.S. Capitol Police Force, regardless of the personal tragedies which occurred later, is deserving of this organization's condemnation and disdain. I should have not had to use this time to explain to adults as to why the U.S. Capitol Police Force were complicit and useless in the attack on our democracy this day. I repeat the sentiment: if things were different, if those folk were black, things would have gone differently. And I'd like to take a little time to address the Chief Diversity Officer's veto, which is really nothing more than a way to publicly pledge support for the president and his own poorly argued veto. It seems as if you and some other senators have a different interpretation of the legislation, which should have been asked about and clarified on the floor when the other senators were allotted their time to discuss the legislation. Sarah and I did not state ideas such as defunding UCPD and restarting the Connecticut Commitment Fund were one-off solutions to the issues of addressing the Capitol riots. They were posed as ways in which this organization and UConn in general could further support faculty and students that are Black, Indigenous people of color in this difficult time. Let me break it down for you. The key word within this clause is such as, which is indicative of examples being listed. Nowhere do we pose that these ideas are ways to directly address the riots. The only remedy to the pain caused by the events of the Capitol is to actively work towards the dismantling of racist and classist institutions that allowed this event to even occur. And I would like to mention that only the Diversity and Outreach Commission has the power to veto legislation, not the Chief Diversity Officer himself. As a voting member of said commission and speaking for a large majority of said members, we would have never agreed to vetoing this legislation in the first place. So if we're being honest, the Chief Diversity's veto isn't worth anything here. In conclusion, this situation is dire for you, Mr. President. None of your advocacy directors support this veto. Very few members of Senate leadership support this veto. You've engaged in a battle that you will ultimately regret in the long run. The fact that this veto is written tells me of the hypocrisy and fake woke bullshit that has become commonplace within this organization.
Senator, please don't use foul language.
My apologies, but The thing is today, nobody wins today because you, Mr. President, have decided to pursue a course of action that has become a source of confusion, shame, and embarrassment for USG in the past few days. You've set in motion a future uncertain with your poorly planned veto tonight. You and your actions have caused unneeded pain, stress, and unnecessary work for those in USG. I can assure you that regardless of the vote tonight, you've made a foolish decision that will ultimately hurt this organization in the long run.
Senator, please maintain
I'm
decorum, please.
I'm wrapping it up.
Okay.
I'll personally tell you, I'm not rewriting a thing, and I'm sure not participating in the writing of a watered-down legislation that would insult the intelligence of every person of color in this call. I don't know about you or anybody else in this call, but I don't compromise when it comes to my people. Don't get me wrong, and these are in the words of a friend of mine, Christine. I can stand with working with Republicans, I can, but I can't stand for working with an organization that at the end of the day will not defend me or my Black, Indigenous people of color on this campus. Thank you for your time, Senators. That is all, Mr. Speaker. I know I went on and on and on, but it's just the way that it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mack. In the future, please refrain from going towards personal attacks and from using foul language in speeches in the Senate. It can be used, but it should not be. Yeah. So I see two hands up. I see two hands up. I'll get to both of you in a moment. Michael, why is your hand up first?
Mr. Chairman, there was an ad hominem attack, and I would like to respond. As you stated in the beginning of the debate guidelines, that if that were the case, then the person would be able to respond.
I would like the specific nature of the attack.
I would like to respond to the attack about my intentions for this legislation.
As chair, I don't believe that one's intentions, especially given this current circumstance, warrant a personal attack, given as your intentions are deeply tied to the veto itself. And they are, in fact, what's being discussed. I don't feel as if it would be fair to me in order to allow you to speak here, but not allow Senator Hill to have spoken before. So for that reason, I'm afraid that I cannot grant this speaking right at this time. I'm sorry to say, President Hernandez.
I respect your decision, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
Thank you. Senator Bergen, what is the nature of your raised hand?
Yeah, I would like to raise a point of diversity for Senator Mack generalizing all white folk, as he said in the beginning of his speech, and by saying that he's sick and tired of all the white folk in this call.
Seeing as the Chief Diversity Officer has his hand up, and I don't know if it's related, but I will yield to him to make a ruling on this particular matter.
First, I'll note that the hand up is not related to Senator Bergen's point. To Senator Bergen's point, that was patently inappropriate to paint all members of any group within this body with a single brush. I understand and saw that Senator Mack went on to clarify and narrow his remarks. I would encourage in the future, though, to perhaps lead with the specifications as opposed to with the first four words at the beginning of that sentiment. As for my raised hand, I was also seeking the same right of reply that the president was. Seeing as you ruled that way, I will lower my hand and not seek.
Yes, so I make the same ruling on that front. At this time, despite okay, the hands have gone down. Now we will move into a vote on this matter. Yes, I have to set up the poll. Jess, what is the nature of your raised hand?
I just have a question.
Sure.
So once everyone votes, is that the last time once everyone votes, that's it and it's done? Or are you gonna announce what the vote is and then there is a conversation to be had afterwards, if that makes sense?
So I hadn't planned this far ahead, I hate to say. My intent at this moment in time is to announce the results and then move. I would like to skip announcements, if possible, seeing as it is 8:35 p.m. and people have things to do. But if there is a significant desire to have further discussion, It can be entertained, but it will be extremely limited.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jess.
Mr. Speaker, as a point of order,
yes.
If there is discussion after this, we are currently at the 2-hour mark, and the Smart Table Act that this body passed last
correct.
would mandate us to have a recess.
So to that point, Senator Keelty, I'm actually going to, after the vote, enter into a tabling so that I can verify the results of the vote with the Chief Justice, seeing as it's a contentious issue that people care about. So we will be moving into a recess after the vote concludes. And then we will move to hopefully a very limited discussion, and then to announcements, and then to the conclusion of the meeting. Neha, what is the nature of your raised hand before we begin this vote?
Oh, don't rub your eyes just as I start speaking. Even if there is no like moderated discussion, like I said, me and Irene will be in this room if anyone wants to talk after in a more informal way.
Yes, that's a wonderful point. I'll stay for a portion of time as well. But I do have an obligation following this. With that, I actually have to stop sharing my screen because I didn't prepare the poll ahead of time. So just give me a moment. Yeah, and I'll set this up.
Luis, can you explain what a yes vote and what a no vote means?
Sure, Ben. Just for you, a yes vote will mean that you are in. I'm actually going to write it up. So override the president's veto. Do not override the president's veto. So if you want the legislation to be in effect, vote yes. If you do not want the legislation to be in effect, vote no.
And I'm not a senator.
Yes, and Damani, you are not in fact a senator, so you do not have voting rights.
Thank you. These things confuse.
Fair enough.
Point of order, I guess. Question.
Yes.
Just general question. I don't know if I missed this. I was a couple minutes late. An abstention, is that going to count towards the 2/3 requirement?
An abstention will not count as a no vote in the 2/3 requirement. So it will be 2/3 of people have to vote yes and 1/3 of people have to vote no. So that is the relationship between those numbers. It's not 2/3 vote yes and 1/3 vote no or abstain, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so an
thank you.
abstention essentially means that you're not casting a vote for or against.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, the panels is just not working and polling didn't show up once. Oh, okay, here we are. So let's see. Veto. Override the veto.
I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, can you explain the yes or no again? Because I blanked out. So if you vote no, it's not to overturn, but if you vote yes, it is to overturn, I guess is my question.
Yeah, so you'll have two options. It's not even going to be yes and no. I'm writing them out for everyone. There's override the veto, do not override the veto, abstain, and I will make a note. This does not count as yes or
I love the accessibility. I mean, he's saying it out. He's answering questions.
I love it. I love it.
And then not a voting member of the body. Woohoo! All right. Let me record individual responses so that I can verify the results with the Chief Justice. And now the poll should be open. Please, everyone, answer the poll. There's 5 minutes to do it, but the faster you do it, the faster we can have the results in. Yeah. And after you vote, we're considered on a break. So after you've completed voting, feel free to stand up, stretch your legs and all that. We're moving into a recess immediately following the vote. And I assume it shouldn't take me more than 2 minutes, so let's call it like a 3-minute recess. No, we'll do 5, just for the sake of my sanity. So we're going to move into a 5-minute recess as soon as voting is concluded.
All right. Wow.
We currently have 5 people not started and 5 people in progress. So just double check that you voted. I've done it in class before where I've not clicked the option and then lost credit. So just be sure to actually do that. So your vote is counted.
All right, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. See you guys in a minute.
Hey, Mitch.
What's up, man?
Not much. How you doing?
We're just chilling.
You know, honestly, I think
cameras are just off though. What?
I think this is just about the shortest controversy that USG has ever had. It only took us 2 hours to get through. I mean,
I'm remembering the comptroller's elections with back with Fabio, and I'm just like, my first Senate that went on till like 11, I think, almost.
Oh, you're right, Lakita. It really did. It was a long, long time. It was forever.
Literally only a year ago, and it feels like a lifetime ago.
That was
But
when
I
I
mean, that's
first
when
got
we got
saved.
pizza. Didn't we get pizza that time? There's no pizza tonight.
Guys, can we get pizza?
Yeah.
There are 3 people who have still not started voting.
Senate? Why am I forgetting this?
Everyone, please, if you've not started voting, please vote.
Irene, are those the purple Doritos?
I showed them to all of you when I first started eating, but no one commented.
I'm sorry, Irene. We were a little busy. There was a veto override going on.
You know, we wanted to wait till we can actually speak to, comment on it, basically. It was all.
It wasn't germane. We'd already used our one speaking, so we couldn't.
I couldn't exactly raise a point of order about it. All right, I'll be back.
Louise, maybe next time, like during breaks, you can put on Pandora. That's what my professor does.
That would be wise.
She always
Perhaps
puts on
in the
Pandora.
future.
It's Taylor Swift radio. Because she says that's the one with the least bad words.
I can play music right now, but I'm not playing Taylor Swift. I'm sorry to all my Taylor Swift lovers. But I can play music.
There's still 2 people who haven't voted. Please, like literally, your votes could determine it. Like it is very, very close. So it's very important that everyone who votes votes. Because this is actually like the closest vote I've seen in terms of passing or failing, like in my whole time
Please
as
don't
speaker.
give it away. You're spoiling it. You're like building up the suspense.
But
I can play music though.
Stop getting my anxiety levels up. Like, this is not okay.
I just want everyone to vote, and make sure that your voice is reflected.
Are they both senators, or are they?
I can't see, sadly. I wish I could.
That would be helpful.
It would, wouldn't it?
Although this was a very difficult conversation, as my time as parliamentarian, I've never seen this many participants in caucus or Senate. So welcome to all the people I've never met. It's so great to see your names and faces for the first time.
Going back to the Pandora thing, may I make a recommendation that we play from the CSI playlist?
We could do that, yeah. Where's Damani? You could play that. I was gonna say Spanish music because like if you understood it swears, like good for you, and if you didn't, like, oh, there's no swears.
I can support that.
Mind amazes me.
I don't have the CSI playlist, like Damani, Josh Crow.
Josh is here? Sorry, that was loud.
I don't know, but he's the CSI like head.
Oh, I thought CSI was like a play on letters for CDO. I was like, why do they keep saying CSI?
Oh no, it's like a committee that like does like
social interaction.
Yes, social interaction.
Is that what does CSI stand for?
Wow, you're smart. That was crazy.
Wait, what's the
social interaction is probably what it is.
Yeah, it is Committee of Social Interaction, I think.
Oh,
I'm getting it wrong.
Okay. That makes sense.
Hey, who's the cool person that has like a logo in their like picture? What is that logo thing?
What logo?
I think it's Connor's. Is that like a book?
I don't know. I've been looking at it for like 3 minutes now. I can't figure it out, so I need help.
It looks like a book to me.
What'd you say?
It looks like a book.
It does?
It's a
Where's the
crown,
binding
like
of it though? That's my thing. Like I see a book too, but I can't. You know what,
like a,
guys?
kind of like a this angle.
It's like an abstract book though. Like it doesn't have all the lines going on.
Don't shame the book. It's doing its best.
It's the best photo that I could find. Look up Project Wingman.
Wait, what is it?
Project Wingman Monarch.
Interesting. What does it
Oh, wow.
represent in the video game?
Player character.
Interesting.
Interesting.
So you can
Is
make
it a
your
good
profile
game?
picture anything.
It has a good Steam review. It's at 9 out of 10.
You looked it up fast. Dang.
Damn.
Dang. I was about to look that up too, but that was like that. You were already there.
Trying to get
At
into
least
games.
one of
I'm
the
playing Last of Us
songs-
2 right now.
At least one of the songs should be on the CSI play.
Good to know.
Just make some.
What's it called?
some
Something
game
Monarch?
recommendations, please.
Project Wingman.
Project Wingman.
Monarch specifically, or just Wingman?
Project Wingman Monarch, I think.
Monarch.
3 words.
I should make a playlist. Hey, I'll come back to USG if they make me a music committee chair. There we go. I'll do that.
Easy.
Seems
I'll already start the legislation. Anything to bring you back. Music commission.
Jess, you said come back, and I turned my camera on.
I was like, just let's go. What did you say? Why?
Unanimous consent.
I will literally come back to do that, to make you guys break playlists. Oh, Monarch is the wing leader of the Hitman team. Okay, okay. That's actually
Oh, I see
it
that
looks like
too.
a cool
Of Cesario Mercenary Corps.
Wow.
Hi, Sam.
Hi Sam, I just followed you on Instagram. Did you follow me back? Did you follow me back?
Podcast.
Did you follow me back?
Our podcast.
I requested like half of USG on Facebook yesterday, thinking they were in my request, but it was in the people you may know. If you got a Facebook request from me, I meant it, but I didn't know I was doing it.
Don't worry, Neha. I already added you back.
Thanks. Sorry about that.
I'm gonna be offended if I'm not friends with you on Facebook right now.
It was funny, Neha, because I went on Facebook last night for the first time in like a month and a half for
Oh
no
wait, you
reason.
added me. Yeah, I saw you add me back.
That's exactly why. Man, I was going through my a lot.
Okay, we're friends. Thank God. Okay.
You guys can all follow me on Instagram if you want to, but my stories are definitely nonpartisan. Definitely not nonpartisan. Feel free to follow though.
Christine, what you eating over there? Looks good.
You know, everyone's turning their cameras on. I'm stress eating ice cream. So
While we're
really valid.
I want everyone here to know that I sat on my glasses and broke them when Sarah was talking. So
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's tragic.
I'm so sorry. I was playing Last of Us 2 the other day, and a zombie came out, and I like whipped my head so fast because I got scared because I was like sitting close to the TV that my glasses fell off my face, and it was really funny. I wish I had a video. That game is scary. I don't know if anyone has played it, but that game has had me on the rocks. If that's
What
even-
game?
It's called Last of Us 2, and it's like a zombie game. But it's like
The only zombie game I've played is Call of Duty Zombies, and anytime the dogs come, bro, it's over.
Oh
And
my
everyone
gosh,
says it's
okay,
the easiest round.
I re-downloaded it. I literally can't get past level 7 because the dog.
Because of the dogs. Because of the dogs. The dogs are so scary. And apparently it's the easiest round.
Oh, they're scary? I thought you didn't want to shoot them. That's what I thought.
That too. My boyfriend was like, I have to spend half the time reviving you, and I was like, it adds.
There's
to it.
zombie
You're
dogs.
welcome.
You're
There's
welcome.
zombie dogs. It's a difference.
There you go.
Christine, what ice cream are you eating? Is it just plain vanilla?
This light
Vanilla bean. There's a difference.
Christine, have you had a vanilla bean colada from Dunkin' Donuts? You need to try it.
No,
Go to
it's
vanilla
so
bean ice cream,
good.
you'll love it.
I can't eat Dunkin' anymore.
Why? It makes me shit a lot. I mean, I was just gonna put it out there. I mean, I know we were all
Great minds think alike, because that's literally what I was about to say.
Thank you. I'm so happy you're here.
I was that was literally about to come out of my mouth. I was like,
I'm gonna claim Jess because me and Jess are the same person. I hope she's fine with that.
hey.
Literally,
Literally,
does make me shit.
I can't drink coffee either. It's like, for what?
Taco Bell is the worst. Burger King's the worst. Don't.
Wait, what
eat
about
Burger
tea?
King. Tea's good. Tea makes me feel good.
I don't know. I can't stand anything. It's just all too bitter.
I don't know. Like chai.
No. I know I'm a disgrace, but it's okay.
No, sir. That's the only tea I drink. Not the ones from Dunkin' and Starbucks. I'm sorry. There's like cinnamon in that.
Okay.
It's like not chai.
No, chai tea is not a thing. I'm just gonna put it right out there.
What is chai tea? Like, why are they doing this?
Okay, you guys don't like chai tea? Dang. I
Why are you hating on chai tea like
say the
this?
same name over and over again, and then when you
Chai
add the latte,
tea means tea.
Lakita Janana, how did chai tea? It's I said on my glasses. I can't see. I'm just.
I can't see. So
What's here?
Tea? What did chai tea do to you both? I want to know.
It says chai tea.
This should be the new icebreaker. Where's Nestle?
Is peanut butter a butter?
Okay, can we not? The time for heated debate is over. Okay, this is supposed to be a cool down.
Who is talking?
Oh, is that Dalton? Hi, Dalton.
I was like, I
Hello,
haven't heard
everybody.
that voice. So I don't know who's talking.
I knew that to talk. I knew it.
Peanut butter is only acceptable when coupled with chocolate.
What?
It's a butter.
It's fine.
So yeah,
I hope you're okay.
I want to give away the question. We're going to ask this question in ACK Affairs tomorrow about peanut butter. It's a butter, right? Peanut butter is butter. Yes, it is. So it's called butter.
No.
You're still wrong, but it's called butter. Why would they lie to us?
It's not a butter.
Yeah.
I would love to hear all
They
of
both
these.
have a lot of fat in them. So like
Y'all can continue this conversation.
A lot of things have fat in them. That doesn't make them butter.
corporations sometimes I feel like a butter and like
Okay, wait. Y'all need to come to academic affairs and have this discussion. Not here.
How is that an academic affairs question?
A
A well-marbled steak has a lot of steak ain't butter.
Was that you asking? I claimed it. Dalton and I claimed it. So it's an academic affairs territory.
What time is academic affairs tomorrow?
5.
It's at 5.
Tomorrow's Thursday. Maybe?
That's all we're doing, by the way. We have time for nothing else. I'm making sure that
Everything's on our
it's on this
agenda.
once and for all.
Drop a statement of position.
Just
I mean, I can get even more controversial and say that I'm not a fan of peanut butter, period. But I feel like that'll
such a
get too many
shame.
of you triggered.
It's such a shame.
You also
It
don't
really
like
is.
tea?
Yeah, I know I'm a weirdo like that.
That's like the end of
No tea.
Titanic, but like for food.
The Titanic didn't make me cry. And so I didn't like it. Like usually romantic movies make me cry. Like that's how I rate them. Like did you make me cry? The Titanic didn't make me cry.
Did you watch the photograph?
The what?
The photograph? It's with like Keith Stangard. I think is that his name? Stangard?
No, but I'll watch it. The Note made me cry like 3 times. In different sections.
That puts me
of the
into a
movie.
terrible headspace. Speaking of
Terrible
romantic
headspaces?
movies. No. Yeah, and terrible headspaces. Valentine's Day is coming up. Is there any USG romance? If anyone wants to ask me to be their Valentine, I'm here. It's like just playing. Imagine.
Jess, I'll put it out there.
Would you
I'll
be
put
my
it-
Valentine?
That was
Neha,
me
Valentine.
shooting my shot.
Neha, are we gonna get in a fight?
I mean, we can be
for
friends.
too.
I don't mind like
Wait,
all dating.
Monogamy. We can be. What is it? Polygamous.
No, polygamous. We can all date. Like I'm okay.
Polygamy.
We can all be each other's Valentine.
And I'm just here alone with my peanut butter. That's all I need.
I've got my.
I'm allergic. I'm literally allergic.
See, that's fine, but the thing about peanut butter that's so awesome is like the ideological construct of it is so foolproof that they can apply it to other things like sunflower seeds and make like sun nut butter for people who are allergic to peanut butter. So anyone can enjoy the wonders of peanut butter in different
As
forms.
an idea.
Yeah, because the idea of it is so strong.
Oh, I thought that was
Really
like
matter.
you. I thought you were.
No, sunflower like sun butter is a real thing.
Sun nut butter is a real thing.
Sunflower butter is actually really good.
Yeah,
I like
exactly.
it.
See?
You know what, Sam? I can't get over the time you made me try rice milks.
Hey, rice milk.
Rice milk?
Rice milk is the best milk.
What is rice milk?
Rice milk? Milk from animals.
Oh, it's
So I'm allergic to regular milk, soy milk, almond milk, any kind of nut milk, and
What about oat
coconut
milk?
milk. So rice milk.
What about oat milk?
I drink.
Yeah.
I like oat milk. Oat milk is the only like valid contender for me. But like rice milk and oat milk are like top tier.
Did you put
And
rice
I will
milk and
not-
oat milk in the same like?
They don't taste anything alike, but like I like both of them.
But you're saying they're close? I mean, I think it's pretty. I think oat milk is very far superior. Like,
Mason has an opinion. Oh,
I heard the conversation, then I heard milk being brought up, and I heard the oat milk slander. I had to.
I want my milk to come from the boob of an animal. Like, come
Oh
on.
my lord!
I thought you said boob up an animal, and I was like, that's only happening in 10 years.
I tell you, whenever I wake up in the middle of the night, I drink like a whole glass of milk. Like people drink water usually. I only go for milk in the middle of the night.
I grew up like that too.
Peanut butter and whole milk is like heaven.
Does anyone do that here?
1%, Dalton, not whole milk.
We're in the process of
the way to be.
But like, 'cause that's a good mix. But yeah, at this point, no milk sounds better.
Yeah, I guess we take like.
Almonds? No one likes almonds?
One drinks 2%.
I drink almond milk sometimes.
My dad loves almond milk.
Almond milk is so.
It's a healthier alternative.
Yeah,
it's good. It's good if like you have like a sugar if you don't want to have too much sugar.
I don't know if you can hear me.
We can.
Hi.
What's up?
Wait. Is that how you pronounce your name, Mitchell? The one with the world in the back.
Yeah, you got it.
That's you? Oh, okay. Is that another world to your left? What is that?
Yeah,
green?
okay, so that one's just like a basic ass map of the world, which is continents. Then this one's the geomagnetic curves of the earth and stuff. I don't know why. It went with at my last school, it went with like the bedding I had, so I bought it, and then this one is a tapestry, so
I was like, that's a lot of worlds in one room.
it really is. On a map of Yukon up there, like the little one that student activities.
Also, are you like a geography major or something?
Political science and environmental studies, so no.
You're environmental. That's really cool. I like environmental.
What are you?
What's your major, Jess?
I'm a nursing major.
Ooh, okay.
I'll take.
You like it?
Not this week, but most weeks. Not this week. This week's been pretty hard. But
who's a poli-sci major?
Is that about every week?
Poli-sci major.
I just became a poli-sci minor, but
Ooh, that's what we love to hear, Sam.
history all the way.
Nah, poli-sci all the way.
Let's hear it for English.
I see history and poli-sci as kind of like a rice milk oat milk situation.
Yeah,
I'm willing to bet no one in here is a math major.
Poli-sci is so much farther.
I'm betting no one's a CSC. Actually, no, my sister's a CSC major. I can't use that argument anymore.
Ben, we usually have like one or two math people.
No,
I
Ben
bet
just
we have
gets
no
to
one-
highlight himself. He's a math.
I bet we have no
Dude.
one that's majoring in turf grass sciences, like the real major at UConn.
Is that a major?
Yes.
Do we have any puppetry?
It is.
What the
Do we have
fuck?
any puppetry?
Oh,
my Louise is back.
Don't harass it.
Oh, Louise is
Video is
back.
recorded.
Louise is here. Welcome. Bow down to the king.
I'm on my last
Not
bit of
bowing
ice
down
cream,
to-
so I'm ready.
What ice cream?
I just got through verifying the vote with the Chief
Yay.
Justice, so we're going to return. I hope you all had a very productive break. This was probably the closest vote I've ever been a part of in USG, and I appreciate all of you for taking the time and voting the way that you felt. So, with that, in a vote of 24 to 12 to 1, this veto is overridden. So, with that out of the way, the legislation is now in effect, and the Senate will continue moving on from here. We are now, let me share my screen again. Let me not share that. Share Google Chrome. So here we are. So as we all see here, the veto was overridden. We now move into discussion. I encourage little discussion given the fact that it's 9 o'clock and we all have things to do and we had quite an extensive discussion ahead of time. But if there is any, I will accept it at this time. Braden.
I actually just have a real quick question. This
Yes.
doesn't replace next week's Senate, right? Like next
No.
week, we're still gonna have regular Senate.
Yep, next week we have regular Senate.
Okay, that was my question. That was it.
Thank you. Senator Mack, please keep your statement brief.
Of course, I'm going to keep it brief. Lord knows I talked enough before. But I wanted to thank you all. I think that the right decision was made tonight. I know it was tough. I know it was hard, but I'm proud of each and every single one of you, and I respect all of you, even those who didn't necessarily agree with me. It was a good fight. It was a hard fight, and that's just how I like them. Thank y'all. Just thank you, man.
Thank you, Senator Mack. We will now move to Senator Bergen. I'll express my same sentiment. Please keep it brief.
So just to confirm, I think this has been talked about beforehand. If someone votes to abstain, that's not counted at all, right? Because I know the vote was exactly 2/3, but if that vote to abstain is counted, then it would be less than. So that wasn't counted at all.
That was not counted at all. An abstention was made clear from the beginning that it would not count for or against the legislation.
Okay, thank you.
We will now go to President Hernandez.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to thank everyone for the debate tonight. And I would also like to leave us with some parting thoughts to always remember this is a space to learn. That's why it's not the real government. It's an amazing opportunity that we have USG so we can prepare when we go out into the real world. I also encourage people to not fall victim to ad hominem attacks. And let's always communicate in a civic manner. And my office is always welcome for discourse. And I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you very much for sticking around. I yield my time.
Thank you, Michael. So we will have a chance for announcements after this. I encourage that these one-off sentiments are left there. It's fine because I didn't make that clear. So no ill will to those who've already spoken. But we'll go to Juthu and Jithu. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name, and then Damani, and then conclude discussion.
Hey, I was wondering, is there a process we could obtain the roll call vote?
A roll call vote?
Yeah.
I'm going to rule that out of order as I have the exact results of the vote, and I can provide the voting numbers at a later time.
Thank you.
Of course. Once the minutes are finalized, that is. So we will now have Damani.
If I understand him correctly, I think the previous senator was actually looking for the names, not a vote again by the roll. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But just generally to the discussion, I'd like to thank everyone for their participation in the discussion tonight. Particularly, I understand, having been at one time a senator overriding, sitting to override the veto of then President Pia. I definitely understand the distance, that is created between executives like myself and the president, and senators, particularly when we don't know each other as well. So I want to commend everyone who stood up and spoke tonight, particularly some of the later speakers who were inspired by others, and then the earlier speakers who went ahead and inspired their fellow senators to speak up tonight.
Thank you for that sentiment, Damani. For clarity, I think that I'm going to make I'm going to make an effort to make the vote tallies available on the USG website going forward, just because our votes, we are elected officials and our votes are public information. So going forward, I want that to be aware that is a project I'm undergoing. Just in general, I suppose this is an announcement, I will consider it the first announcement. But know that in the future, all the vote tallies will be up on the USG webpage soon. I will now go to Sarah Hill.
Yes, this is an announcement. Thank you. The actions of our current USG president and his supporters and leadership are irreconcilable with my values as a student and as a representative. Under leadership puts personal interest over the public good, neither this body nor I as a representative can fulfill the duty we were elected to perform in good faith. This abuse of power leaves me no option but to resign, effective immediately. until there's positive change that actively works alongside the values of the student body, I will not be engaging in this organization. USG has a responsibility to live up to the potential it has to change people's lives for the better. That cannot be done until USG pulls it together and respects one another and their activists on campus and within this organization.
Thank you to Senator Hill. I accept your resignation, and I'm sorry to see you go. Senator Keelty.
That's a little awkward to follow. I just had a question for you, Luis. Will we be expecting to also see previous votes up on the website? Because I know there currently is a spreadsheet that hasn't been updated since October of 2019, and I'd love to see, a complete accounting of what we've done in the past year.
I'll see what I can do to that effect, but I'm not sure how much of the records I have. But I'll see what's possible to be done and get back to you on that.
Thank you.
We'll now go to Neha.
For those who aren't senators and are here, I just want to let you know that committees are open to everyone. They meet Tuesdays 5 to 6, 6 to 7, and then Thursdays 5 to 6, 6 to 7. And I strongly encourage you to go because even if you aren't in Senate, you can still have a voice in the committees, and the committee chairs are all amazing, or directors, sorry, not chairs. And then second, I'm going to be starting up Snaps and Claps again. For those who have been here, you know what it is. For those who haven't, I'm going to be sending out a form at the end of the Senate caucus, and I think for the next caucus, right, Luis, we're not doing it in Senate, we're just gonna send out a form, and it's just to say something positive about someone in this org. It can be anonymous or not, and then I'll just read it out at the end of every caucus, and then I'm going to be doing a couple more announcements at Senate next week. But I just want to say that committees are open to everyone, and we're going to start up Snaps and Claps again.
Thank you, Neha, for that update. We will now go to Sam because I saw your hand up and then go back down. So Sam, feel free to make an announcement.
Yeah, I just think kind of building on actually perfectly what Neha just said. I wasn't here when Snaps and Claps were around, but I can take a guess at what they were. And I think that, given, I guess, ex-Senator Hill's announcement, I think she deserves, I think they deserve a lot of respect, and I think they deserve kind of a round of applause just to all the work that they've done.
Thank you. We will finally go to Mitch.
Hey guys, real quick, just want to follow.
Oh no, Caleb too. My bad. I said finally. My bad. Sorry to interrupt you, Mitch. Go ahead.
Okay. Just to follow up on what everyone's already said. Great discussion tonight, everyone. I'm glad we were able to maintain decorum for the most part and have a dialogue. I think that's always healthy in any type of body, be it a student government, a real government, or whatnot. And going off of that, real government, I have a new subcommittee, the State Affairs Subcommittee / Student Connection Subcommittee, that's meeting on Mondays at 7. If anyone wants to delve into some real politics that's happening in Hartford, bill tracking, following along, really student-led, so whatever interests you have, we can find out if you don't know yet, and bring it to the table and really try to change some stuff in our state. And again, that's Mondays at 7, and then you could always DM me or any of the group meets if you're interested. And yeah.
Thank you. We'll now go to Chief Justice Moore.
Thank you, Speaker Toscano. I'd like to announce to everybody, in case you didn't see my very official email today, that the election packet is now live. Spring elections are on their way to us. They'll be here before you know it. If you are an academic senator, then if you wish to retain your seat, you'll have to run again. If you're a member of the public who's here who wants to get involved more than a committee capacity, then I would encourage you to run. Tell your friends. We want as many people as possible, both running for positions and voting, period, in the election. We can't do that without all of your help. Word of mouth is extremely important. So please do me and the Elections Oversight Commissioner a favor and spread the word. Thank you.
Jess, we'll go to you, and then I'm going to call the meeting to a close.
Let's go. I get the last statement. That's dope. Okay, so just wanted to emphasize what Sam said. Sarah does definitely deserve their flowers while they're here. They've done such a good job, and I cannot be prouder of them. It makes me sad to see them go, but I love them so very much, and I know a lot of you do. So, yes, clap for them, and I wish them the best on their endeavors. But yeah, that's all I had to say. And to everybody, I know it's the third week of school. I know some of you are struggling because I am too. So just remember, you do have friends in USG. I know it gets stressful here sometimes, but that's how I met Neha, and I love her. So please remember to talk to your friends if you're going through stuff, and it's okay to be overwhelmed in week 3 because trust and believe, I am overwhelmed. So yeah, that's my closing statement.
Thank you, Jess. Before I close, I just like to echo that. I appreciate the discussion that was had here, and I'm glad with the outcome. I think that it is important to have these disagreements, and I'm very content with the way that it was done. For the most part, we acted very civilly and we engaged in a productive way. So for that, I thank all of you who did so, and I look forward to future meetings of the Senate, hopefully under less stressful circumstances. With that announcement, I'm going to call to a close at 9:12 p.m. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for participating in our democracy, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.